Chapter 2807. Back in the dormitory, Luo Qingxun received a text message from the dean of the Academic Affairs office after taking a shower. The notice of the transfer had been approved. She could go to the Academic Affairs office tomorrow morning to receive the relevant items after the transfer. Luo Qingxun glanced at the time. It was already 9 o'clock in the evening. She planned to go to bed after drying her hair. But she didn't expect that Fat Tiger would receive a phone call that directly made her lose the time to sleep. Qingxun, what should I do? My brother was detained in the Muse bar. Fat Tiger was very anxious, his face alternating between blue and white. Her psychological quality was particularly bad. Coupled with the rough and loud voice of the person on the phone just now, she was probably frightened. Muse! Luo Qingxun's eyebrows slightly wrinkled. It was the most famous high-end bar in the city. Although she had never been there, she knew a lot about the aristocratic circle. Muse bar's turnover every night was more than 1 million. There were many rich second generations who went to the bar to drink or pick up girls. Moreover, Muse was actually one of the businesses under the name of the Luo family. It seemed to be the original owner's mother. Her mother opened the bar on a whim after tasting wine from all over the world. Originally, it was only used to store her own wine. She didn't expect that it would eventually become one of the landmarks of a city, a place for rich people to squander. The chubby girl was just an ordinary student. How could her brother go to a place like Muse? Why would your brother go to a place like Muse? Luo Qingxun blew her hair twice and changed her clothes directly. Is he your biological brother? Yes, he's my biological brother. Fat Tiger's tears fell as he put on his clothes. He choked with sobs. My brother is very good to me. Our family's condition is not good. In order to let me go to school, my brother dropped out of school very early to work. You mean he doesn't go to Muse to spend money, but works in Muse? Luo Qingxun put the phone in her pocket and asked, what did those people say on the phone just now? Although they shouted loudly, she couldn't hear it very clearly through the phone. It seems like they want to take out money. But where do I get the money? Fat Tiger held the bank card in his hand and said, even if I add the pocket money from the past few months, it's only 2,000 yuan. Luo Qingxun frowned slightly, and a dim light flashed through her eyes. In fact, in the original owner's memory, Fat Tiger was a very frugal girl. Other than the money she had to spend in class, she basically didn't spend a penny. Every day, when she went to the cafeteria for lunch, she would look at the braised pork for a long time, but in the end, she couldn't bear to order a small portion. But taking a step back, the money paid by the class was quite generous. Every month, the class fee would start at 500 renminbi. The few girls with Guju as the core would always buy a lot of drinks and snacks and put them in the small fridge at the back of the class. However, ordinary people like them didn't even have the qualifications to touch the fridge, let alone have a drink or a snack. But if they didn't pay this class fee, who knew how Guju's group would treat them? Therefore, Fat Tiger didn't spend much money on himself every month, but he wasted a lot of money on class fees. Don't worry, I have the money. Luo Qingxun took the dorm key and said, let's go and see what's the situation. If we really have to pay, then we'll pay. If someone is looking for trouble, then it's a different story. That place, is it far from here? Chapter 2808. Ever since Muse became a landmark in city, many small bars opened up around Muse, and their business was quite good. The street's name was changed from Northwest Street to an elegant and artistic name, Moonlight Street. The moonlight was gentle and intoxicating. Young lady, it's so late at night. Be careful. The driver was a middle-aged man. He reminded them as he turned on the meter. Yes, it's fine. Luo Qingxun chuckled and said, we're going to pick up a friend. As soon as the car turned into Moonlight Street, the bright lights shone into her eyes, and the air was filled with the fragrance of alcohol. It was as if she would get drunk if she took a few more breaths. It smelled pretty good. The driver stopped about 50 meters in front of Muse and said to them, cars of our caliber can only be parked here. You can't park in front of Muse. The cars that can park, they're all luxury cars that cost millions. Yes, thank you, sir. Luo Qingxun scanned the QR code and paid the driver, then pulled Fat Tiger out of the car. She lowered her head, still afraid. Her hand was tightly clutching the 2,000 yuan bank card that she had been saving. Do you trust me? Luo Qingshun patted her head gently like a big sister and comforted her. Based on how I fought against 10 people at school today, I should be able to gain your trust. Fat Tiger slowly raised his head. The colorful lights shone on Luo Qingshun's side profile. Her face was fair, her eyes were bright, and her hair was messy. She was so beautiful that she seemed to be glowing. Fat Tiger felt as if he was under a spell. He could only nod his head and say, I trust you. I trust you. Luo Qingshun gave a shrug and walked in the direction of Muse with a chuckle. All of a sudden, she felt that her time in this world wasn't too bad after all. At least she could save Fat Tiger and meet Mu Lichuan the moment she arrived. At the same time, a Nissan sedan stopped not too far away. The person sitting in the car was none other than Su Chun. Ever since he left school, he couldn't calm down for a long time. Anxiety, uneasiness, frustration, unwillingness again and again, all the negative emotions surged into his heart on this day. No matter what he did, he couldn't digest them all. Therefore, after dinner, he decided to go to the small bar on Moonlight Street for a drink or two. He didn't expect to meet Luo Qingshun here. What's she doing here? Su Chun narrowed his eyes and fixed his gaze on the girl across the street. She shouldn't like coming to this kind of place. Could it be that his cold actions today had hurt her? Why was it that even though he had resolutely told himself to part on good terms, in the end, the one who couldn't let go wasn't her, but himself? Su Chun closed her eyes, parked the car by the roadside, and walked forward. Cars worth less than 5 million yuan could not be parked within 50 meters of Muse Bar. Although he did not frequent Moonlight Street, he still knew this. He walked across from her and watched her stop at Muse's door. Su Chun was slightly shocked. If she wanted a drink because she was in a bad mood, why would she go to Muse? Moreover, the girl behind her was her roommate. Two girls going to Muse so late at night was really worrying. Chapter 2809. The attitude of the security guard was very bad, especially the feeling of looking down on people. Luo Qingshun cleared her throat and said, We were told to come. Did something happen to a waiter just now? Although her words seemed to be a very ordinary inquiry, it actually contained a lot of information. At present, they didn't know what happened to Fat Tiger's brother. It was always good to get some information. Oh, the security guard looked at them up and down again and said, I'm afraid you really can't save Little Lee. The person he offended tonight is not an ordinary person. Go in, maybe you can see him for the last time. Fat Tiger's face became paler when he heard this sentence. Luo Qingshun hurriedly patted the back of her hand and whispered, It's okay. At least it proves that your brother's current situation is not in danger for the time being. Since the other party called the chubby girl to ask for money, at least the money came first and the life came later. Muse Bar was not the same as an ordinary bar. It occupied an area of 50 meters in front and behind. Except for the hall that was similar to other bars, the rest of the place felt like a train. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple, each private room had different colors. It felt like a train carriage. As soon as Luo Qingshun and Fat Tiger walked into the bar, they saw a group of people gathered in a certain place. Let's go and see. As soon as her voice fell, Fat Tiger roared, Brother! Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes and looked at the teenager who was kneeling on the ground and being forced to drink. Standing in front of him was a fat man with big ears and a familiar figure. Guju. She wasn't used to a college student coming to this kind of place. Moreover, Guju was originally a young lady from a rich family. However, her dress was completely different from her appearance at school during the day. Guju seemed to have heard Fat Tiger's voice and raised her eyes slightly. There was a little surprise in her eyes at first. Then there was a touch of pride in her eyes like a queen. God was really good to her. The humiliation she suffered in the evening gave her a chance to retaliate in a bar in the middle of the night. Oh, it's really a narrow road for enemies. Guju applied a layer of dark lipstick. Her right hand habitually picked up a slender lady's cigarette on the table and took a deep puff. This is your brother? She finally looked at Fat Tiger. Looking at his pale face, she felt an inexplicable sense of joy. Little fatty, go back quickly. This is not a place where you can come. Before Li Hui could finish his sentence, his hair was grabbed by the fat man in front of him. He showed his big golden teeth and smoked a big cigarette. He looked at him and said in a choked voice, "Shut the F***ck up. You're only fit to drink under my crotch." Boorish people's words were so unbearable that it made people feel nauseous. Luo Qing-chun slightly knit her brows and softly said, "What did this waiter do that he needs to apologize to you like this?" "Little girl, do you know who you're talking to?" The big golden teeth fiercely looked at Luo Qing-chun and said, "If you have the ability, say another word for me. If I really say another word, I'm afraid I'll be finished here tonight." Luo Qing-chun's cold eyes suddenly looked up with a touch of murderous intent. The big golden teeth froze for a moment. It was as if he was intimidated by the murderous intent in the air. Chapter 28:10. In the blink of an eye, Luo Qing-chun turned sideways at lightning speed. She casually picked up the beer bottle on the table with her right hand and slammed it on the edge of the table. The glass shattered into pieces, making a crisp sound of zzz. She was so fast that the men and women who were watching could not even see how she picked up the beer bottle and went to the gold-toothed man's side. When they came back to their senses, half of the beer bottle was already on the gold-toothed man's neck. The girl's gaze was calm, and there was a cold smile at the corner of her lips. The cold beer bottle was emitting a 7-colored light, making it look so sharp. "You're right. The lives and dignity of ordinary people like us are worthless in your eyes." Luo Qing-chun smirked and shrugged fearlessly. "Since we're going to die anyway, why don't we save our dignity and perish together with you?" The gold-toothed man, who was in high spirits earlier, felt his legs turn to jelly. However, the sharp beer bottle was already on his neck. If he lost his balance, his artery would be pierced. "This!" The crowd gasped and looked at Luo Qing-chun in disbelief. The gold-toothed man was a frequent customer of Muse. He was violent, unreasonable, rude, and lecherous. He had bullied many people because he was rich. Who would have thought that he would be defeated by a little girl today? What are you trying to do?" Grandpa Jean gulped nervously. He tried to calm down, but realized that he could not. This seemingly ordinary little girl was right. Her life was worthless. If she was impulsive, she might really perish together with him. He was rich, powerful, and beautiful. He would never perish together with such a lowly life. "I'll ask nicely and you'll answer nicely." Luo Qing-chun's voice was neither loud nor soft, but it was extremely cold. You tell me. Tell me." Big Teeth Jean felt the sharp beer bottle scratching the surface of his skin. Sticky blood oozed out slowly. "This little girl, don't even think about going home in one piece tonight." Although Big Teeth Jean thought so, he could only compromise on the surface. "What's the grudge between you and this waiter named Shaoli?" Luo Qing-chun raised her eyebrows slightly. She pursed her lips and said softly, "I'm an impulsive person. I advise you to tell the truth." Luo Qing-chun. Before the gold-toothed man could answer, Guju called her name. She did not look good. Obviously, she thought that she would be able to mock Luo Qing-chun tonight. She did not expect that before the show in her mind's eye. "If you have something to say, just say it. I don't want to talk to you." She looked up arrogantly with a cold light in her eyes. Liking a person might not mean liking each other, but hating a person definitely meant hating each other. There were many ways to hate a person, but she liked the most direct way. "This waiter spilled cocktail on my dress. This dress is a limited edition from Paris. It costs 6 figures for one. So don't you think you should pay for it?" Guju tightly gritted her teeth as she looked at Luo Qing-chun. "What? So you can sell your poverty just because you're poor? Do you think you could just say no money when you do something wrong?" Guju's words were sonorous and powerful. She sounded like she was standing on the moral high ground. Chapter 28:11. "You said he dirtied your dress?" Luo Qing-chun looked down at Li Hui and asked, "Is that true?" "No." Cough, cough, cough. Li Hui's face was pale, probably because he had been forced to drink too much alcohol. But he still tried to explain himself. "I was delivering something to the young master of the Blue Water Room. She suddenly backed away and bumped into me. A little waiter dares to question me?" Guju roared. I can buy 10 of my dresses a month, but you can't afford one in your lifetime. Why would a person of my status make things difficult for a poor person? Guju is amazing. As expected of the big sister of the class, she used the so-called rich-poor theory to explain the situation. The rich wouldn't steal from the poor, but if the poor had something from the rich, it must have been stolen. She didn't expect to see this kind of 16th century European noble slave act so blatantly in front of her. After Guju said this, there were all kinds of comments around her. I think the girl in black is right. Poor people's things are dirty. If it didn't bump into me, I would feel disgusted just walking past them. That's right. If the girl in black bumped into them herself, she wouldn't accuse someone over a dress. I don't think it's necessary. Anyway, it's obvious that the waiter was negligent. Since he can't afford to pay, he can only pay that. Although most of the comments were unpleasant, there were one or two that were pleasing to the ear. You can't say that. People who come here are either rich or respectable. There's no need to feel superior. You can't be so sure about anything. If Muse could release the camera, we would know the truth. Unfortunately, our status is limited. We don't have the right to make Muse release the camera. Luo Chun narrowed her eyes before looking at Guju. Her lips curled into a smile of deep meaning as she said, "Then even if what you say is true, what do you have?" Before she could finish the word evidence, Li Hui interrupted her. "Classmate." Even though Li Hui was still under the control of the gold-toothed man's men, he still used all his strength to say, "She's not telling the truth. Don't compensate her. Dirtying other people's things and not paying for it is indeed something that poor people like you would do." Guju looked down at them like an absolute queen. Her red lips curled up as she said, "Lowly people. I heard that there's something interesting here, so I came over to take a look." In the next second, a lazy and cold voice slowly sounded from the crowd not far away. There were already a lot of onlookers. At least half of the people in Muse Bar were there. But when this voice rang out, everyone around him made way for him. He was dressed in a dark purple suit with a gorgeous 8-pointed star badge on his chest. He looked very noble. Her chestnut hair looked so beautiful under the warm light of the bar. Young Masterly. The security guards around him called out his name at the same time. In Muse, or even in the entire business circle, no one dared to offend the Mu family, much less Mu Lichuan. Every man wanted to have a drink with him, and every woman wanted to brush shoulders with him. Young Masterly. Guju suddenly remembered what happened in school this evening. Mu Lichuan helped Luo Qingshun, but she didn't know why he helped her. Chapter 28:12. Young Masterly. Guju bit her lip as she looked at Mu Lichuan. "Although we're not friends, I admire you. Why would someone of my status deliberately make things difficult for a waiter?" "Okay." Mu Lichuan sat down on the sofa and elegantly picked up the cocktail the bartender handed to him. "I believe you." "Eh." At that moment, Luo Qingshun felt like there was a buzz in her head. Could it be that Mu Lichuan wasn't here to help her, but to help Guju? That was impossible. According to Guju's words, she wasn't close to Mu Lichuan. Taking a step back, this meant that he didn't have much of an impression of Guju. As for her, as his childhood sweetheart, as the one who had 10% of his affection for her, she suddenly couldn't understand Mu Lichuan. It was as if under that gentlemanly and elegant appearance, there was a devil's heart. Perhaps it was because of Mu Lichuan's words. Those who wanted to stand on Guju's side earlier on were emboldened. After all, since young Masterly of the Mu family had spoken, they could do whatever they wanted. See, the poor will always be poor. There are so many shameless people in this world. That's right. If you know that you're broke, then don't come to Muse to be a waiter. Don't you know that people like us are filthy when they touch us? Why don't you move bricks? Why do you have to come to Muse to be an eyesore? The construction site is more suitable for you. This time, other than these unbearable words, there were no other opposing voices. Mu Lichuan was indeed Mu Lichuan. No one here dared to disrespect him. Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes and looked at Guju from the corner of her eyes. She had a victorious smile on her face with heavy makeup. It was a kind of pride that came from the bottom of her heart. It really made people want to give her 2 tight slaps. This was the first time she felt that Mu Lichuan wasn't cute at all. No wonder the original owner didn't like him even though they were childhood sweethearts. Instead, she fell for that scumbag Su Chun. She wasn't cute in the first place. Who would like her? Everyone would want to please her. Young Masterly, you're really an understanding person. Guju pursed her lips and chuckled. Some things can only be understood by people from the same world. Low-class people won't understand. I don't care about this dress at all, but if you can't afford it, don't make up lies. Guju felt as if she was flying into the sky, as if she was sitting on a space cotton ship. She felt her whole body was soft and very happy. She always thought that with her status, it would be extremely difficult for her to get close to Mu Lichuan. She didn't expect that they would cross paths today. What if Mu Lichuan fell in love with her? Oh my God! Whenever she thought about it, she felt as if flowers were blooming in her heart. Those who know me know that I'm not a very understanding person. Mu Lichuan laughed coldly and asked, "How much is this dress?" Guju was stunned for a moment. She didn't quite understand what Mu Lichuan meant, but she still replied proudly, 160,000. The famous designer from Paris, Avril. Yes, I'll pay for it on his behalf. Before Guju could finish her sentence, Mu Lichuan interrupted her. The handsome guy standing behind him immediately walked over and placed a stack of money on the glass table. Mu Lichuan narrowed his eyes and said with a faint smile, "You can take off the dress now." Once again, Luo Qingshun felt as if her head was buzzing. Chapter 28:13. Hiss, hiss, hiss. She heard a series of gasps. The bar, which was originally noisy, became exceptionally quiet at this moment. No one dared to say a word. Even those who were particularly loud earlier quietly retreated to the back of the crowd, afraid that they would be implicated. At this moment, she looked at Guju's face. Her initially proud and excited face had turned extremely pale at this moment. This moment was probably the most shocking moment in her life. Her head was probably no longer buzzing. Instead, it had indirectly stopped working. She was panting heavily and tears were about to fall from her eyes. The man standing in front of her was Mu Lichuan. No one could define Mu Lichuan. Why did this happen? Why did he pay for them? Why did he ask her to take off her dress in front of everyone? What did she say wrong? Why did Mu Lichuan believe her? She thought that she was standing at the highest point of morality and had spoken clearly, but she didn't expect that. You've already paid. Leave the dress and you can leave. Mu Lichuan's voice was slightly cold, and there was an unknown light in his eyes. He didn't care what the truth was. However, the truth had yet to be decided, and the public opinion was one-sided. He didn't like this feeling. Moreover, although Luo Qingshun hadn't received the inheritance, she was still the only daughter of the Luo family. She was even half the owner of Muse. He knew her identity, so it was natural for him to help her. However, when he saw her big and clear eyes looking at him, he felt an inexplicable sense of satisfaction. This kind of satisfaction was rare for someone like him who could have anything. I don't want him to pay for my dress. Guju gritted her teeth and looked at everyone in front of her with reddened eyes. Finally, her gaze fell on Luo Qingshun. This was the first time she hated an ordinary student so much. In the past, she had always bullied her in class. However, every time she wanted to bully her, she would retaliate. This feeling was too frustrating. "Oh," Mu Lichuan replied coldly. Then, he smirked and said, "Then you can leave too. Don't ruin everyone's mood." Mu Lichuan's voice was neither loud nor soft, but it was extremely cold. When the onlookers heard this, they started to chime in, "Hurry up and leave. Otherwise, you'll embarrass yourself here. We haven't even investigated the matter, and you're asking her to pay for it? She's a diligent waitress. What did she do wrong?" "Exactly. She even said that the dress cost $160,000. Who knows if it's a pirated dress?" Hearing all these comments, Luo Qingshun couldn't help but laugh. It was such a sudden turn of events that they were able to flatter Mu Lichuan so naturally. Guju wiped the tears off her face and walked out of Muse in her 10 centimeters high heels. The humiliation she suffered in front of Luo Qingshun today, she would definitely make her pay the price. After Guju left, Luo Qingshun gave a shrug. She put down the beer bottle and walked over to help Li Hui up. Chapter 28:14. What do you think, little girl? Mu Li Chuan suddenly looked at her and changed his tone. It seemed like he was asking for her opinion. Luo Qingqian was stunned for a moment. Then she cleared her throat and said, I think your teeth look good. Li Hui's injuries can be compensated with your teeth. In the next second, the gold-toothed man removed his golden tooth without a word. There were still green leaves and black stains on his tooth. He wiped the gold-toothed man and looked at Mu Li Chuan. Young Masterly, what do you think? Little girl, what do you think? Mu Li Chuan once again gave Luo Qingqian the authority. She didn't know why, but she felt that other than giving her the authority, there was also a hint of affection in his tone. 10% favorability. This was probably her misconception. All right, that's it. Luo Qingqian said to the fat tiger on the side. Help your big brother out and wait for me outside. Qingqian, Fat Tiger had a complicated expression on his face. He was touched and panicked at the same time. Go ahead. Luo Qingqian knew that with her mental state, she would definitely be frightened. It was better to let her go out in this situation. Thank you. When Li Hui brushed past her, although he couldn't even stand properly, he still thanked her politely. Luo Qingqian nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. Tonight's pub storm had come to an end. The onlookers had mostly left after Gu Zhu and the gold-toothed man left. After all, although everyone wanted to walk past Mu Li Chuan, it didn't mean that they had the guts to do so. Luo Qingqian wanted to stay a little longer because she wanted to thank Mu Li Chuan in person. However, she didn't expect that the moment she turned around, there would be a sweet-looking girl sitting next to the sofa. She had long, curly hair, a pink sweater, and a pair of shorts. From where she was standing, she looked like she wasn't wearing any pants. If you don't come back, they'll think that you have a new girlfriend. The girl's voice was very soft, like cotton candy. With such a tone of voice, any boy would not be able to handle it. Mu Li Chuan nodded slightly as he looked deeply at Luo Qingqian. She also looked at him. The two of them looked at each other, but did not speak. Young Masterly. The girl seemed to be acting coquettishly, but there was no impatience in her voice. She probably didn't dare to be impatient. After all, this was Mu Li Chuan, and no one would dare to be impatient with him. Perhaps no one could see through him. Okay, Mu Li Chuan replied calmly. He then stood up and walked in the opposite direction of her. After taking 2 steps, he stopped. She didn't call out to him. 3 seconds later, he continued walking forward. The girl in the pink sweater turned around to look at her, and the light in her eyes seemed to have changed at this moment. It no longer looked innocent and harmless. Instead, there was a hint of sharpness in it. Luo Qingqian gave a sigh as she suddenly felt a large rise and fall in her heart. There was too little information in the original owner's memory, so she had no idea what kind of man he was. Elegant and cold, domineering and arrogant, or dangerous and mysterious. Qingqian. Just as she was lost in her own thoughts, a familiar voice called her name. Chapter 28:15. Su Chun. It was Su Chun again. Back in the previous host's world, after Su Chun broke up with her, she wanted to meet him so badly, but they never did. Why did she keep bumping into Su Chun wherever she went? I didn't think that a professor from an elite school would come to a bar in the middle of the night. Luo Qingqian put her hands into her milk-white coat and looked at him calmly. I really didn't expect this. I saw you coming in from next door, so I came in to take a look. Under the warm lighting, Su Chen's face looked even better. He was the kind of person who wouldn't be that stunning the first time you saw him, but after looking at him for a long time, you would find him more and more attractive. Back then, the original owner had felt the same way. She could read her admiration for Su Chun from her memories. Moreover, it was harder for her to extricate herself as time went on. A little what? Luo Qingqian raised the corner of her mouth and looked at Su Chun with a mocking smile. Are you worried about your student, Professor Su? Luo Qingqian admitted that she was filled with hostility towards Su Chun. Therefore, no matter what Su Chen's motive was for coming to Muse, whether he was concerned or just passing by, to her, it didn't mean anything. Su Chun was stunned for a moment. There was a heavy feeling in her heart. It was an indescribable feeling. In the next second, he suppressed the turbulent emotions in his heart and looked at Luo Qingchen. It's too late. I'll send you to the hospital and then send you back to your dorm. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes. There was a sour feeling in her heart. Almost made her eyes turn red. These were the feelings that the previous host had left for this person. She probably really loved Su Chun. Even though these feelings were already dead, they were still buried in the depths of her heart. Although it was shallow, she could still feel it. Professor Su is too. Luo Qingchen paused as her clear eyes sparkled in the light of the wine. Isn't he meddling in other people's business? Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 20%. Mu Lichuan hadn't left yet. Mu Lichuan was listening to her. Damn, did it have to be this exciting? This person wasn't elegant, cold, dangerous, and mysterious, right? He must be a black-bellied person. On the second floor, Mu Lichuan was sitting in the VIP seat in the Orange Water Room. He was leaning against the sofa and could see Luo Qingchen's direction. His hearing was good. Although their conversation was not very loud, he could still hear it clearly. Young Masterly, the information has been checked and sent to your mailbox. The handsome bodyguard standing beside him bent down and explained the task he had assigned. Yes, he replied faintly and took a sip of the red wine on the table. His eyes, which were as deep as ink, glowed faintly. He was in a good mood, especially after he heard Luo Qingchen say that he was too nosy. It was as if a pool of clear water flowed into his heart, and he was suddenly enlightened. Young Masterly, do you know that girl? Bai Shui placed her hands in front of her chest. Her pink sweater was especially warm under the light. She had spent a lot of effort and connections to be able to stand by his side. He had told his good friend this evening that he liked pink and feathers. She had specially worn a pink sweater when she came to the bar at night. However, the limelight had been stolen by someone else tonight. His eyes seemed to be attracted to her as they kept moving towards her direction. Chapter 28:16. Mu Lichuan's voice was cold as he narrowed his eyes at her. Didn't young master Hu tell you? Don't ask questions that you shouldn't. Bai Shui was stunned and quickly explained. That's not what I meant. I just mentioned it casually. That girl in black doesn't look like a good person. I'm just worried that she'll go back and cause trouble for that girl. She won't have a chance. Mu Lichuan narrowed his eyes. As he spoke, his gaze turned even colder. Bai Shui narrowed her eyes when she heard this and felt even more uncomfortable. If Mu Lichuan could say something like this, it was enough to prove that he knew that girl and was trying to help her. In order to defeat the girl by Mu Lichuan's side, she tried her best to find out what he liked, what he hated, and what he couldn't touch. In fact, there were so many girls around her, including herself, but they weren't even considered as girlfriends. It was just that everyone knew that there would be a girl by Mu Lichuan's side every once in a while. That girl would be able to stand close to him and not be rejected by him. And this kind of girl kept changing and changing again and again. He seemed to treat every girl by his side the same way. He wouldn't do anything else. However, as long as she could stand by his side, he would fulfill all of her requests. However, Bai Shui was more concerned about the admiring gazes of thousands of people. In this industry, which woman didn't want to know Mu Lichuan? And which woman didn't want to stand by his side? She loved the feeling of being envied, and stared at. Just like now, she was sitting in the Orange Water Room with Mu Lichuan, surrounded by envious and jealous gazes. Even if Mu Lichuan wasn't looking at her, she still felt extremely proud. That's right. She loved vanity, and she loved the vanity who stood by Mu Lichuan's side. Young Masterly, do you have a lot of classes tomorrow? Bai Shui, try to find a topic. The weather forecast said that it's going to snow tomorrow. Why don't we go skiing? In the next second, Mu Lichuan narrowed his eyes and looked at the first floor with a cold gaze. Before Bai Shui could finish her sentence, he had already put down his wine glass and walked toward the first floor. This was because the man named Su Chan had reached out his hand and grabbed her wrist. It was an action that made him feel very uncomfortable. He could never tolerate himself having such a feeling. I said I would send you guys off today, so I will. His tone was the same as before when he was angry at her for doing something wrong. There was an unknown emotion in his reproach. This was an emotion that even he couldn't control. Luo Qingchen's gaze fell on his slender fingertips. Her eyes were as cold as frost. She said slowly, "Professor Sue, please conduct yourself with dignity." As soon as she finished speaking, she waved her right hand and flung away his shackles. This was the first time they had confronted each other after coming here. Perhaps she didn't come to this place late, but just in time. "Qingshun, don't throw a tantrum." Su Chan frowned slightly. "You weren't like this in the past. You used to in the past." Luo Qingshun sneered, looked at his familiar eyes, and said word by word, "You are not qualified to talk to me about the past." Okay. We won't talk about it anymore." Su Chan saw that there were people around them, so he took a deep breath and said, "Your friend is waiting for you outside. Let's solve this problem first." "Then I don't need you," she replied almost instantly, without a trace of hesitation. Qingshun, Chapter 28:17. The moment Mu Lichuan appeared, Luo Qingshun was secretly delighted. In Su Chen's heart, the original owner of this body had always been a spare tire. No matter how much the original owner of this body refused to admit it, she was still in Qingyu's spare tire. She's my student. As her teacher, it's my duty to send her home. Su Chen's eyes were calm as he looked at Mu Lichuan. There was no fear or admiration in his eyes. "Professor, it's the 21st century now. This girl is no longer a high school student. She's already an adult." Mu Lichuan put his hands in his pockets and looked at him lazily. "Her parents aren't worried about her coming out to play alone. Professor, aren't you being a little too nosy?" Hearing this, Su Chun narrowed his eyes. He was speechless. He was no longer her boyfriend. He couldn't control her or protect her like he used to. In such a complicated place, the Luo Qingshun of the past would definitely hold his wrist and hide behind him carefully. But now, other than his identity as a professor, he didn't know what else he could use to control her. "Student, you're just passing by. You don't even know who her parents are. How do you know that her parents won't be worried about her?" Although Su Chan felt that his words were far-fetched, it did make sense. Whether it was in the United States or in China, he had never met Luo Qingshun's parents, even though he had been with her for so long. Perhaps it was because her parents were busy with their lives, or perhaps her parents were no longer in this world. He had asked her about her parents before, but she didn't seem to want to talk about it, so he didn't ask further. However, Mu Lichuan was able to mention it so casually. It gave her the feeling that he knew her parents. Both of us know whether her parents are worried about her or not. In the next second, Mu Lichuan's right hand wrapped around her shoulder. He narrowed his eyes and smiled at Su Chan. "Professor, you don't have to come all the way here. I don't want the little girl and your jealous student to be unhappy." Luo Qingshun was stunned. Suddenly, she was brought into a warm embrace. She never thought that Mu Lichuan would say something like this. It seemed like he had a clear understanding of the relationship between a man and a woman. But why were there still so many women around him, even though he had seen everything so clearly? Su Chan looked at the two people in front of her being so intimate. She stood there, speechless. When he came back to his senses, he was already looking at Luo Qingshun and Mu Lichuan's backs. Suddenly, there was a feeling of weakness all over his body. It was as if his heart was beating very fast and his breathing had become rapid. Under everyone's gaze, Mu Lichuan brought Luo Qingshun out of Muse. At the same time, Bai Shui chased after them and shouted, "Young Master Li, do you need my help?" She knew that he was right to his hearts. He didn't like a spoiled, bratty girl. Therefore, no matter how much she hated Luo Qingshun at this moment, she had to pretend to be innocent. This was the only way Mu Lichuan could feel how special she was and how good she was. However, there were some people who Luo Qingshun could tell what kind of person they were with just one look. Perhaps she shouldn't be called a White Lotus. She could only be called a little pretentious. At the very least, the things she said and did should be very different from what she thought in her heart. Chapter 28:18. Bai Shui was stunned by his coldness. She felt an inexplicable sense of fear. It was as if she stepped back, she wouldn't be able to stand beside Mu Lichuan anymore. Bai Shui gritted her teeth and looked at Mu Lichuan. "Be careful on the road. Call me if anything happens, okay?" Perhaps it was because Bai Shui was different from the other girls around him, but he didn't turn around and leave. Instead, he replied calmly. Okay. Actually, Luo Qingshun didn't think that there was anything wrong with this okay. After all, one shouldn't hit a smiling person. You didn't come back for so long. I thought something happened. Fat Tiger bit his lip. He still didn't look well. However, compared to the frightened Fat Tiger, Li Hui's condition was worse. Luo Qingshun reached out and pressed on a few of his wounds. There were signs of slight fractures. Moreover, there were many small and big glass wounds on his body. If they weren't treated in time, it would be easy for him to get infected. Don't worry, I'm fine. Luo Qingshun shook her head and said, let's go to the hospital first. By the time Wu Lichuan sent them to the hospital, it was already 2 in the morning. Li Hui's injuries weren't light. In fact, there was a glass wound that was 3 centimeters away from the artery on his inner thigh. It was very dangerous. When Fat Tiger went to sign the papers, Luo Qingshun remembered her name. Li Xiao. There was a sense of elegance between the lines. It was completely different from her nickname. I'll call you Little Xiao Xiao from now on. Luo Qingshun chuckled and joked, it's such a nice name. Don't let it cover you up. Wah woo 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 woo. Luo Qingshun was stunned before she could react. Fat Tiger. Li Xiao directly kneeled down on the ground. Qingshun. Qingshun. Wah wah wah. Do people cry so easily these days? Cough cough. Luo Qingshun quickly cleared her throat. In order to avoid being surrounded in the hospital, she quickly helped her up and said, don't cry, don't cry. If you have something to say, just say it. You'll get fatter when you cry. Li Xiao was speechless. Little did she know that Li Xiao was crying even louder. Luo Qingshun thought about it carefully and felt that her way of comforting him was not quite right. She hurriedly said, she's not fat, she's not fat. Our little chubby girl is not fat at all. Li Xiao's face was filled with tears. She felt like she was about to suffocate. Luo Qingshun felt that it was better for her not to speak. After a long time, she tremblingly wiped away her tears, looked at her, and said, thank you, really, really thank you. From childhood to adulthood, except for her relatives, no one treated her as well as Luo Qingshun. She was like a god, her whole body emitting a dazzling light, suddenly intruding into her life. No matter what kind of trouble she encountered, she would always be by her side to protect her. This time, he even saved her brother. It's okay. You've helped me before. Luo Qingshun shrugged and chuckled. Go see your brother first. I'll wait for you outside. Since she had never experienced those things in the parallel universe, she did not want to experience them. Luo Qingshun turned around and saw Mu Lichuan, who was not far away, holding his laptop. She did not know what he was looking for, but he seemed to be very focused. She walked forward and took a peek at the laptop. Mu Lichuan slammed the laptop shut with a loud thud. Cough, cough. Luo Qingshun blinked and changed the topic. Thank you for today. I'll treat you to a meal next time. Are you sure you can afford to treat me to a meal in 2 years? Mu Lichuan chuckled with a lazy look in his eyes. Chapter 28:19. I can still afford to eat. Luo Qingshun cleared her throat and said, I wonder if young Master Li is willing to accept this position. It's a little difficult. His gaze was faint, and there was a faint smile on his lips. His gaze was like a diamond star, so beautiful that it would shine. After Li Hui's condition stabilized, Mu Lichuan sent Luo Qingshun and Li Xiao back to their dormitory. The sky was already starting to brighten, but Mu Lichuan didn't look tired at all. Luo Qingshun watched as his Maserati left the dormitory. The dim rear lights made her feel intoxicated in the night. However, this intoxication was broken by the sound of the system notification. Ding! Affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 30%. This Mu Lichuan always liked to silently increase her affection for him. This feeling was quite strange. He stepped on the accelerator and sped off at 120 kilometers per hour. The song, Love is Like a Tide, was playing in the car. The young man's chestnut-colored hair looked especially charming in the night. His lips curled up slightly, and there was an indescribable joy in his heart. The next morning, the incident at Muse Bar last night had already spread like wildfire. There were different versions of the rumors, and some of them even sounded exaggerated to her. Have you heard? There was a palace drama at Muse Bar last night. That ordinary student actually approached young Master Lee. Of course I've heard. Didn't the campus newspaper publish it immediately? Did she really think that she had the right to stand by young Master Lee's side just because he helped her once? Hey, young Master Lee's girlfriend now. Oh, I mean the girl next to young Master Lee. Isn't that Bai Shui? Has there been a change? Bai Shui is my goddess. She's a talented girl in the music department. Her cello skills are so good that I'm drunk. Don't mention Bai Shui. I heard that Gu Zhu lost her face yesterday. She's such a prideful person. I bet she hates that ordinary student to death. Speaking of which, what's that ordinary student's name again? I'm not sure. I think it's something Chun. From the moment she walked into the school, this kind of noisy gossip had been buzzing in her ears. It wasn't until the moment she walked to the photography department that everyone's discussion suddenly changed. F*CK. What the hell is that? Transferred to another faculty? TSK. She's really unscrupulous in order to get close to young Master Lee. But logically speaking, if she doesn't seize the opportunity, she'd be stupid. There's nothing wrong with wanting to get close to young Master Lee. But the problem is, can you take a look in the mirror? What right does this kind of girl have to get close to young Master Lee? Luo Qingqian squinted her eyes and looked indifferent. She didn't care at all. Just as she was about to find a seat, a girl in a light blue fur coat waved at her and said, "Student, there's an empty seat here." In the next second, Luo Qingqian's gaze fell on her. She was very delicate and wore light makeup. She looked different from many of the girls in the class. Luo Qingqian slightly knit her brows and walked in her direction. "Hi, I'm Lanji." The girl waved at her and said, "I heard my sister mention your name before." "Oh, right, you probably don't know yet. My sister is Lan Ting." Probably because of their sister status, Luo Qingqian didn't have a good first impression of Lanji. Chapter 28:20. Actually, the people in our class aren't that gossipy. Lanji pursed her lips and said softly, "Besides, the class monitor also informed us that a transfer student would be coming. Everyone knows that it's you." Luo Qingqian had just sat down beside her when Lan Ji started to explain to her. She seemed to be a very cheerful girl. When she smiled, there were 2 faint dimples on her cheeks, and she was a little cute. Actually, Luo Qingqian did not want to have any enmity towards her. However, her name appeared on the bronze mirrors panel, and it was the position of the #1 female supporting lead. Did that indirectly prove that there was a relationship between her and Mu Li Chuan? Maybe it was in the past, or now, or in the future. "Thank you," Luo Qingqian replied faintly. "I don't really care." "Actually, it's normal to care." Lanji laughed softly and looked at her. After all, which girl doesn't care about what others think of them? Hey, Gigi is right. The moment Lanji finished speaking, a teenager with dyed green hair behind her patted her shoulder and said, "Although there are a few people in our class who are very gossipy, most people don't care about these messy things. We only care about how to take the most inspiring photos." The next second, Lanji rolled her eyes at him and said, "Your hair is very inspiring." Uffed. Probably because Lanji was too direct, Luo Qingqian could not help but laugh. Everyone said that people who studied photography had a higher EQ of art, and the facts proved that it was true. But there's something you might not know. Lanji blinked and said, "That, other than young Master Lee in our class, it seems like you didn't have anything to do last night." A familiar voice sounded from the front. Bai Shui was wearing a snowflake patterned sweater, and her hair was combed into a princess hairstyle. Her skin was as fair as snow, and she had pink lipstick on her lips. She did look like a porcelain doll. Lanji muttered softly, "Actually, she transferred to our class not long ago. She was originally from the vocal music department and transferred because of young Master Lee." And Luo Qingqian replied, "I heard this morning that she used to be a vocal music student." Hey, the green-haired boy patted her shoulder again and said, I heard that the cello is really good, ah?" Her beautiful voice shocked everyone. Lanji rolled her eyes at him. "Your voice is also very scary." PFFF. The conversation between the two of them was really too funny. It gave off a feeling of not being on a normal campus. Not this kind of deformed, noble commoner. But you don't have to worry about it. Because of young Masterly, there are at least 10 people in our class who transferred here. There are more than 70 people in our photography department, which is the department with the most people in the whole school. Lanji started to nag in her ear about how popular Mu Lichuan was. Whenever he spoke to a girl, that girl would think of all sorts of ways to bump into him and fantasize about having a story with him. He was truly a heartthrob. With such a popular person, it was better for her to slowly get in touch with him. After all, the best plan was to slowly increase his liking for her and not become the target of public criticism. She shrunk her neck and planned to quietly pursue young Masterly. Bai Shui's expression darkened when she saw that Lan Ji did not respond. She wanted to say something, but Mu Lichuan's voice suddenly sounded from behind her. Cough, cough. He cleared his throat and walked around Bai Shui, his gaze landing lazily on Luo Qingchen. You're too much. You're the closest to me in our class, but you didn't choose me as your desk mate. Do you not like me? Chapter 28-21. At this moment, the entire class's eyes fell on her. Even Lan Ji, who was sitting beside her, was looking at her in disbelief. She wanted to say something, but stopped herself. Bai Shui bit her lips and stood there, her expression dark. However, she had to suppress her emotions and not let anyone see it. Mu Lichuan didn't seem to mind at all as he smiled and walked towards his seat. He sat in the leftmost row by the window. The cool light shone on his chestnut-colored hair, making him look especially tranquil. For the entire morning, Luo Qingchen was in a daze. She only regained her senses when the teacher said that they were going to start preparing for the desert trip. The most famous department in the Royal Academy was the photography department, because the professors were very professional and had been to many places. The biggest difference between Mu Lichuan and the other young masters of wealthy families was that he was very talented in photography. Luo Qingchen had seen his camera before. Although the photos were different, every one of them made her eyes light up. It's the desert. I've never been there before. Lan Ji, who was sitting beside her, was very excited. The boy with green hair behind her was also very excited. Okay, everyone be quiet. The teacher knocked on the podium with a ruler and said, due to the lack of resources, there are a total of 10 places to enter the desert this time. There was a wave of complaints. After all, there were more than 70 people in their class. If there were only 10 people entering the desert, wouldn't their chances be very small? Luo Qingchen glanced at Mu Lichuan, who was leaning against the window from the corner of her eye. There was a faint light in his dark eyes. Since he liked photography so much, he would definitely go to the desert. This kind of person was extremely difficult to win over, and it was extremely difficult to gain a good impression of him. If she didn't think of a way to spend more time with him, she might lose a good impression of him one day. Teacher, can't you say more? It's such a good opportunity. Everyone wants to go. Yes. And it's a desert with no man's land. It sounds very exciting. Oh no, I can't go. You have to take my soul with you. Everyone in the class was talking at once. Everyone seemed to be particularly interested in the desert in the no man's land. If he could take a different picture in the desert, it would become the pride of a photographer's life. I'll give everyone 3 days to submit their works. The homeroom teacher continued. Choose the top 10 entries and go to the desert with the exploration team. I really want to go. Lan Ji was still muttering in her ear. I'll hand in all my best works from the past few years and leave it to fate. Don't be nervous. Luo Qingchen responded with a chuckle. Surprises always happen unexpectedly. Lan Ji's personality was indeed very different from Lan Ting's. At least the feeling she gave her was more sincere. Thank you for your kind words, Qingchen. She smiled and turned around to look at the green-haired youth. When this big sister comes back, I'll bring you some sand from the no man's land. No, the green-haired youth said. I want to go to the no man's land and fill it with sand myself. Lan Ji was right. It would be more comfortable to get along with people who liked art. At least, compared to the previous mathematics department, this class was like heaven and hell. Chapter 28-22. 1 minute before the school bell rang, Luo Qingchen received a message from an unknown number. She opened the message and realized that it wasn't from an unknown number. Miss Luo, didn't you invite me for a meal? Why don't we meet today? Mu Lichuan. Luo Qingchen didn't know how Mu Lichuan got her number, but it made sense since he could get anyone's number. Didn't young Master Mu say that I can't afford it? Why don't we wait for another 2 years? Luo Qingchen. Her reply was a little naughty, probably because she wanted to make it sound like a rhyme. Cough, cough. Since you're going back on your words, I'll just announce your identity. Mu Lichuan. Damn it. Did he have to be so direct? Brother, please have mercy on me. It's just a small matter. I know a restaurant that serves really good food. Luo Qingchen. Beep, beep. In less than 2 seconds, she received a reply. I'll be waiting for you at the parking lot. Mu Lichuan. Luo Qingchen put down her phone and inadvertently looked up. Coincidentally, her eyes met Mu Lichuan's. He narrowed his eyes, and a faint smile appeared on his face as he walked out of the classroom. Bai Shui, who had been paying attention to Mu Lichuan, saw this scene. Therefore, before Luo Qingchen reached the parking lot, she was blocked by Bai Shui. The gentle, cute, and considerate girl had finally taken off her glamorous mask. Luo Qingchen, stop right there. Her voice was different from Gu Zhu's sharp voice. It was deeper than usual. Luo Qingchen stopped in her tracks and narrowed her eyes. A faint light flashed in her eyes, and a faint smile appeared on her face. What's wrong, Bai Shui? Are you finally going to show your true colors? She turned around calmly and leaned against the railing. There was a hint of coldness in her eyes. After coming to this plane, the number of girls he had to face wasn't an ordinary number. From Lan Ting to Gu Zhu, and now Bai Shui, it seemed like both Su Chun and Mu Lichuan were popular. What are you so proud of? How long do you think you can stay with young Master Li? Bai Shui walked down the stairs, crossed her arms, and looked at her condescendingly. I advise you to hurry up and get lost. Don't be wishful thinking. Hee hee. She narrowed her cold eyes, and a faint smile appeared on her lips as she said, Don't you know in your heart whether the one dreaming is you or me? You. Bai Shui gritted her teeth. I'm just pitying you. Even if we leave young Master Li's side, we can still do well in school. But you're different. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes, and a dark light flashed through her eyes. Bai Shui continued, Once young Master Li doesn't want you anymore, your life will be plunged into endless darkness. Therefore, those who didn't dare to touch you because of young Master Li will attack you together. Oh, I see. Luo Qingchen pretended to be enlightened and said, So, Bai Shui, you're still thinking about me? I'm not thinking about you at all. I just don't want you to cling on to young Master Li with your lowly status. Bai Shui widened her eyes and stared at Luo Qingchen. You don't deserve it. Chapter 28-23. In comparison, she preferred this kind of confrontation. Wouldn't it be better to be direct with her? Luo Qingchen, just you wait. Bai Shui stomped her feet in anger. Her face was red, but all she could do was stare at her back. Luo Qingchen didn't stop walking. She slowly raised her hand and waved it. Too many people have said that to me. Unfortunately, they didn't end up well. B3, VIP car park. This place was much more spacious than she had imagined. However, as far as the eye could see, there were luxurious cars everywhere. Although the original owner had seen many luxurious cars, she had lived in an ordinary environment all these years. It was inevitable that her eyes would light up when she suddenly saw them. Beep, beep, beep. Mu Lichuan seemed to be worried that she couldn't see his car, so he honked twice. Luo Qingchen sat in the front passenger seat and habitually adjusted her seat. It seems like the daughter of the Luo family knows a lot about Maserati. Mu Lichuan chuckled and put on a seatbelt for her. You're indeed the daughter of Chairman Luo, who owns a limited edition Maserati. Mu Lichuan, will you die if you don't tease me? Luo Qingchen pretended to be angry as she looked at him. Do you know how difficult it was for me to get to this car park from the classroom? Not only were there people looking at her, but there was also Bai Shui, who was a little devil on the inside. Thinking about it, fairy tales were all lies. Snow White might not be a good person. She wouldn't dare to cause you trouble. Mu Lichuan raised his eyebrows and smiled. No one would dare to cause you trouble. After all, they were childhood sweethearts. Even if there was a test for the successor of the Luo family, it didn't stop him from protecting her. I suddenly feel that Mu Li Chuan is a little charming. Luo Qingshun leaned her right hand against the window as she looked at his side profile. No wonder you have so many fangirls. Since I'm so charming, what are you going to treat me to? Dinner. Luo Qingshun raised her right hand and set the location on the GPS. Let's go. Sake, a stylish Japanese-style wine house. The original owner used to like this place very much. Maybe it was because the songs played in this shop were very suitable for her mood. Or perhaps it was because the thick-cut salmon in this restaurant was so fresh that people couldn't help but linger. In short, the original owner of this wine shop liked it very much. Dang, 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 dang. Luo Qingshun waved her hand and said, "Not bad, right? He really does eat rice." Mu Li Chuan raised his eyebrows and said, "I just don't know how good your taste is. Based on what I've seen in the past, I don't think your taste is good." He already knew about the relationship between Luo Qingshun and Su Chan when he was at the hospital that day. From the United States to China, the reason they were together, the reason they were apart. There were so many people and things involved in this. Luo Qingshun could hear the meaning in his words. She cleared her throat and said she was young and didn't know anything back then, but now that she's grown up, her eyes are naturally better. She's really grown up? Mu Li Chuan looked at her from head to toe and said, "She still looks like a little girl. She's really grown up." Luo Qingshun looked at him. The warm light of the wine shop shone behind her. She narrowed her eyes and looked into his eyes, because the person standing beside her now is Mu Li Chuan, not Su Chan. Chapter 28-24. She knew how to flirt with people. Moreover, Mr. Mu Li Chuan seemed to be a little sensitive to flirting. In a situation where there were no words and they couldn't look at each other, affection was the best indicator. It seems like you've grown up," Mu Li Chuan replied calmly with a gentle look in his eyes. In the private room on the second floor, the air was filled with the faint aroma of sake. The lights were warm, and they could see the beach outside the window. 10 plates of thick-cut salmon, Arctic shellfish rolls, octopus salad, eel sushi, and lastly, 2 miso soups. Luo Qingshun ordered about 20 dishes before closing the menu in satisfaction. Mu Li Chuan squinted at her under the warm light of the table and asked, "You're eating so much?" "I'm just trying to show off my generosity." Luo Qingshun rested her chin on her left hand and smiled. After all, quantity makes up for the lack of quality. Mu Li Chuan looked at her helplessly and chuckled. "It's fine if you eat a lot, but you're still blaming me. Eat as much as you want. I'll make sure you're full today." Luo Qingshun pursed her lips and said, "I even ordered 2 small hot pot dishes with beef." He replied calmly. Just as he was about to say something, he was interrupted by a familiar voice. "Let's go upstairs. It's quieter." "All right, you're the biggest on your birthday." As the saying goes, enemies always meet. She and Su Chan really bumped into each other wherever they went. She wondered if Su Chan would be overjoyed if they were still in the original owner's world. When Lan Ting and Su Chan appeared in front of them, at that moment, even the atmosphere seemed a little awkward. In the past, the original owner used to come to this izakaya with Su Chan. She found this place by accident. The owner was a chef who came back from studying in Japan. He was very good at making sushi, and the taste was very unique. When they looked at each other, they could talk and laugh, but they could also say nothing. They were like that. Today was Su Chen's birthday, but she didn't remember. "Why don't we go to the first floor?" Lan Ting looked at Su Chan for a long time and noticed that her gaze was on Luo Qingshun. She couldn't help but say, "The first floor is pretty good too." "Let's go to the second floor," Su Chan replied faintly. She retracted her gaze and walked towards their usual seats. Luo Qingshun looked at Mu Li Chuan and blinked. She bowed and said, "Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. You really don't want to meet him?" Mu Li Chuan's eyes lit up, and there was a faint glow in between his brows. Luo Qingshun nodded affirmatively and said, "Yes, I'm a big girl now." "Then is our chat special?" What do you mean?" She didn't know why, but looking at his half-smile, she felt that he was about to say something incredible. Ahem! In the next second, Mu Lichuan cleared his throat and asked, "Have you prepared the photos of the desert?" Luo Qingshun came back to her senses and said while drinking water, "I'm ready." She thought he would say something special, but she didn't expect it to be about the school's trip to the desert. "Have you told Uncle and Auntie? No man's land is dangerous." PFFF. In an instant, she almost spat out the water in her mouth. What was Mu Lichuan trying to do? Was he trying to reveal her identity here? This is too much of a gamble. Not yet. Luo Qingqin's eyes trembled, and she said, "I'll tell them when I'm sure we can go." She felt that she was too concerned about it. After all, it was normal for friends to care about each other. Chapter 28-25. Message. What the hell was that? In the next second, she snapped out of her daze. They were childhood sweethearts. Mu Lichuan's house in the villa area was right next to hers. Su Chun, who was sitting next to them, paused for a second while holding the teacup. His heart skipped a beat. What did he care about? He didn't know, but he couldn't help but think about the things that happened when they were together. Over and over again, he couldn't get rid of them. Today isn't just your birthday. It's also Qingyu's birthday. Lan Ting opened a can of beer on the table and took a sip. "She's my best friend. Let me give her a toast." Su Chen only snapped out of his daze when he heard the word Qingyu. That's right. He had the same birthday as her, and the first time he interacted with Qingyu was because their birthdays were the same. It was the anniversary of Coffee House. Both of them had chosen 1212 as their lucky number. At that time, they looked at each other and smiled. At that time, they fell in love at first sight. Su Chun picked up the can of beer on the table and opened it. He took 2 big gulps and said, "That's why I don't like to celebrate my birthday. Don't think too much. Since we're out for a meal, you should be happy." Lan Ting raised her glass and smiled sweetly. "Happy birthday." Su Chen nodded and said, "Thank you." The smell of beef hot pot came from not far away. He couldn't hear Luo Qingqin's voice clearly anymore. At the same time, Mu Lichuan looked at her as he washed the mutton. "It seems like you've really grown up. You don't even remember his birthday." "I still remember it," Luo Qingqian said. "I just don't take it to heart." Some people would slowly disappear with the passage of time. As long as she didn't try to remember, there would be a moment when she couldn't even remember what he looked like. After dinner, she was full. When she left the izakaya, Su Chun and Lan Ting were still there. She seemed to have ordered a cake for him with candles on it. If Su Chun didn't do those things that hurt the original owner, she might be interested in hearing about him and in Qingyu's story. Luo Qingshun hadn't seen Su Chun since that night at the izakaya. It had snowed a few times in the academy, and the weather in city, they seemed to have gotten colder. The photography department finally welcomed the biggest event of the year, a desert shoot. The entire photography department was participating in this trip to the desert, and each class only had 10 spots. Each student chose the photo they were most satisfied with and showed it to everyone. The teachers of the photography department would vote to select the students who would be allowed to film in the desert. Rows of photos were pulled like clothes hangers, and all the works were directly exposed to the sun. It was obvious at a glance whether he had talent or not. For example, Mu Lichuan. However, some of the photos were more abstract and special. Not everyone could understand them. For example, Luo Qingqin. Mu Lichuan's photo was taken at the moment of the avalanche. If she hadn't seen this photo, she wouldn't have known that someone of Mu Lichuan's status would be in such a dangerous place. He really loved photography. He loved photography with his life. Young Master Li is so outstanding. He's definitely an extinct, rich second generation. I think so too. My heart is like a young girl. There are already so many girls around him. When will it be my turn? The dream is beautiful, but reality is the opposite of dreams. Damn it. Why am I so envious of Luo Qingqin? No, I'm not envious. I'm jealous. Chapter 28-26. Was there something wrong with these people's brains? Couldn't they talk about unrelated people when discussing gossip? Wasn't it strange to hear her name in a group of gossipy topics? Luo Qingshun walked all the way down and saw the photo she submitted at the end. It was a blank photo. Why was it a blank photo? Did she submit it wrongly? Could it be that someone had switched her photo? She furrowed her brows and paused for 2 seconds before she remembered. Why is this picture blank? But before she could explain it to the teacher, a certain enemy appeared again. Guju, a math student, actually came to look at the photo of the photography department. She didn't even need to think to know that they must be here to observe her work. Seeing her mocking face before she even spoke, people really wanted to rush forward and beat her up. However, for someone like Guju, the hurt caused by words was more serious than the hurt caused to her heart. However, before she could open her mouth to hurt her, Guju opened her mouth first. Ha ha ha, what the hell is this? You want to join the desert tour group with a blank photo? You really went from the math department to the photography department. Guju's voice was as sharp as ever, so everyone's eyes fell on her. And in the next second, their eyes fell on Luo Qingqian's photo. Actually, if one looked closely, they would find that it was actually a snow scene, but from a distance, it looked like a blank photo. Although I can see that it's a snow scene, it's not technical at all, but it really doesn't require any skill at all. A young man with glasses pushed up his glasses and said proudly. Guju naturally agreed. I'm right, aren't I? How can this kind of photo be chosen? The person who took it is really shameless. The boy with glasses continued. I heard that she used to be in the math department. Yes. Guju smiled meaningfully and said, it's a pity that she failed to seduce the professor, so she changed her target and went to the photography department to seduce young Masterly. The boy with glasses shrugged and narrowed his eyes at Luo Qingqian in disdain. She's really fickle. Student, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. Su Chen's voice slowly sounded from not far away with a hint of gloominess. He seemed to be suppressing the anger in his heart and looked at Guju with a sharp gaze. Professor Su. Guju was shocked by the sudden voice. She pouted and said softly, I'm not wrong, not a single word. Su Chen didn't know what was wrong with him, but he seemed to be unable to suppress the anger in his heart. She had never seduced him. If she had to say that she provoked him, then he should be the one who provoked her. When he was in America, he didn't control over his emotions and rushed out to save her. Actually, with the speed of the car with the speed, he could have saved her. But he still rushed out, and then just like that, intruded into her life. Be good to her, protect her, and make her fall in love with him. But when she really fell in love with him, he cruelly abandoned her for his own reasons. Now that he thought about it, he really wasn't a good man. And in this situation, he couldn't turn a blind eye to others slandering her. Chapter 28-27. When he said this, even he himself was stunned for a moment. He wanted to stay away from her, but now, he couldn't help but want to get closer to her. Who was the one who couldn't let go? He had mocked himself countless times in his heart. In the end, he could lie to everyone, but he couldn't lie to himself. The surroundings suddenly became quiet. Only Guju's embarrassed face could be heard, as well as the attention of the crowd. Professor Su, you don't have to speak up for me. In the end, it was Luo Qingqian who broke the silence. She shrugged and smiled casually, because I don't need it. Why should she accept Su Chen's help? No matter what the situation was, Su Chen was a jerk in her eyes. He was the man who indirectly caused the death of the original owner in another world. This would never change. Cough, cough. Guju obviously felt that she had lost her momentum, so she quickly changed the topic. All right, that's your private matter. But I heard that there are very few places for the photography team to go to the desert. With Luo Qingqian's photography skills, she doesn't deserve to fight for a spot with those talented people. After saying this, she didn't forget to look at the bespectacled guy who agreed with her just now. She didn't know that the bespectacled guy was shivering at the side. The reason was there was another man standing 5 meters away from them. He was wearing a white shirt and a navy blue sweater jacket. There was an ornamental scarf tied around his neck. Not only did he look casual, but he also looked very elegant. Mu Lichuan, the person who no one in the royal school dared to offend. Guju's heart skipped a beat. What happened at the bar was still fresh in her mind. Plus, the news about Luo Qingqian and Mu Lichuan's relationship had spread like wildfire in the school. Regardless of whether it was true or not, at least she could confirm that Luo Qingqian was the one who could stand beside Mu Lichuan in the near future. She couldn't accept this. She really couldn't. Why did she have everything? But she couldn't compare to an ordinary student who had nothing. Young Masterly. Gu Zhu clenched her teeth and suddenly nodded. I know that you and Luo Qingchen are close, but I also heard that there are very few spots for this trip to the desert. There are so many classes in the photography department, and so many people want to go. Wouldn't it be unfair to give a spot to someone with such rubbish photography skills? How sonorous and forceful, how righteous his words were. He was simply the embodiment of justice. In the next second, Mu Lichuan narrowed his cold eyes and said, "You're just an outsider. Why do you have to judge a photo from our photography department? Even if you can't tell that this photo is special, it doesn't mean that others can't." Actually, I seem to have noticed something. The green-haired boy sitting behind Luo Qingchen carefully observed Luo Qingchen's photo with a magnifying glass and said in surprise, Could it be this photo? Gushu, why do you look so panicked? Lanji happened to walk over from the other side and said, Don't ruin Qingchen's photo. I even prepared a tent for 2 people. Although it was her first day meeting Luo Qingchen, she had heard about what happened between Luo Qingchen and Suchen from her sister. At that time, she felt that Suchen was wrong, but her sister went against her morals and thought that he was right. Chapter 28:28. I think the teacher who developed the photo didn't see Qingchen's name. Mu Lichuan removed the cap from his head and casually put it on her head. He smiled and said, The resolution wasn't right when I was developing the photos. Actually, she had to admit that Mu Lichuan was smart. After all, there were so many men in this world who weren't smart. However, when he said those words with such certainty, she was still stunned. Everyone looked at each other with puzzled expressions on their faces. Luo Qingchen seriously looked at Mu Lichuan and couldn't help pursing her lips into a smile. The atmosphere was good. Everyone's suspicion didn't matter to him at all. It was as long as people understood him, it was fine. Perhaps it was because of Luo Qingchen's indifferent face that didn't change at all, or perhaps it was because of Mu Lichuan's proud and confident eyes. Gu Zhu was a bit panicked. Could it be that there was something wrong with this blank photo? What does young masterly mean? Is there something we can't see in this photo? I think so. Otherwise, the green-haired man wouldn't be looking at it with a magnifying glass. The more he looked, the more excited he got. Then why can't we see it? Why does he have to use a magnifying glass to see what's in the photo? I'm sorry. An unfamiliar voice interrupted the crowd's discussion. She immediately walked to Luo Qingchen's photo and hung up another photo. This photo and the first photo gave people a visual impression of 2 different worlds. But this second photo made people's eyes suddenly light up. On top of the snowy mountain, the snow formed a pillar that extended to the bottom of the sea. Wherever the ice pillar reached, the sea creatures would freeze to death. This natural phenomenon was known as the icicle of death. However, there weren't many people in this world who had seen the icicle of death with their own eyes, let alone taking a photo of it. Usually, this phenomenon would only happen within 3 seconds. When Luo Qingchen adjusted the focus and pressed the shutter, it was already above 0. Therefore, the light reflected by the lens of her camera was different. If one wanted to see the icicle of death in its entirety, they would have to enlarge the photo infinitely. This way, not only would they be able to see the icicle of death that extended to the bottom of the sea, but they would also be able to see the frozen fish and prawns in the icicle. When Luo Qingchen submitted this photo, she did ask the teacher to enlarge it. It was a pity that the teacher had completely forgotten about this matter. The person who stood out was none other than Mu Lichuan. Perhaps he already felt that something was different when he saw the photo. It took about the same time as Luo Qingchen. Luo Qingchen was standing there in a daze, listening to the gossip of the crowd. He went to find the teacher and had the teacher magnify it by 3 times. As expected, the result was completely different from the snow-white color from before. Wow, that's amazing. Chapter 28:29. It's really the icicle of death. Lan Ji ran forward and took Gu Shu's magnifying glass. After looking at it for a while, she said, Not only does it depend on hand speed, but it also depends on luck. Qingchen, how did you do it? Yes, student Luo's luck is also very good. The teacher who brought the second photo said, "The teachers in the photography department's office were all talking about you just now. You have both luck and ability. It's really amazing. It's the first time I've seen someone take a picture of the icicle of death. There's no distinction between high and low when it comes to learning art. Some laymen shouldn't be jealous. We don't care so much. Don't make people uncomfortable." Guju's face was getting worse and worse. Even her lips were pale. She bit her lip and her whole face seemed to be twisted together. She looked at her and said, "It's just good luck. There's nothing great about a person who takes photos based on luck." She was very angry. Every time she was fully prepared to find trouble with Luo Qingchen, the result was always the opposite of what she imagined. Her identity was clearly so noble. Why did she always lose to such a lowly person? Luo Qingchen looked at Guju, who was burning with anger but couldn't control herself. She wanted to give her a fatal blow. After all, the one who provoked first was cheap. She couldn't be blamed. Luck? She looked up coldly. There was a touch of coldness in her clear eyes. She smiled and said, "Do you think everything in this world is based on luck? Are you kidding me? Could it be that you can predict when the icicle of death will appear?" Guju crossed her arms in front of her chest and looked at her with disdain. "Please don't talk nonsense. It's not terrible to be uneducated. What's terrible is to pretend that you're knowledgeable. That's really embarrassing." Luo Qingchen nodded slightly. A confident light flashed in her eyes as she looked at Guju and said, "Before the icicle of death appears, there will be a butterfly trip in the South Pole. The butterfly's name is Hidden Ice Butterfly. TSK, you think you're so great just because you know the name of a butterfly?" Although Guju didn't know what the Hidden Ice Butterfly was, she still had to fight back. After all, no matter what happened during an argument, one could not be at a disadvantage verbally. This had always been her style, which was why those men who loved her called her Queen Zhu, because she had the aura of a queen. The problem is that most people can't see this kind of butterfly. Luo Qingchen said with a relaxed smile, "Most people include you. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 50%. Luo Qingchen was stunned for a moment. Under such circumstances, the most likely reason why Mu Lichuan was able to improve her impression of him was because he knew what the ice butterfly was. It was an extremely small butterfly with a pair of transparent wings. It was about 10 times smaller than an object that could be seen with the naked eye. They grew in places with extremely low temperatures, such as the South Pole or the North Pole. In the original owner's memory, it was mentioned that her eyesight was very good. This kind of good eyesight was beyond the scope of human knowledge. After coming to this plane, Luo Qingchen could also feel that her eyesight was special. For example, when she ate half-cooked beef, she could see the bacteria on it. For example, bacteria in tap water or fungi on mushrooms, etc. Chapter 28:30. Guju obviously didn't understand what Luo Qingchen meant. She wanted to say something else, but was interrupted by Mu Lichuan's next words. The hidden ice butterfly is a microorganism in the eyes of many scientists. Because it's too small, people can't see it with a naked eye. Mu Lichuan's beautiful eyes landed on Luo Qingchen. If Qingchen can see the hidden ice butterfly, it means that her vision is different from ours. She didn't know why, but when she saw Mu Lichuan explaining seriously, she felt that he was especially handsome. Perhaps it was because Mu Lichuan had spoken, so even if Guju wanted to argue, she didn't dare to say a word. She still had a lingering fear from what happened at Muse that day. Now that she heard Mu Lichuan's voice, she felt goosebumps all over her body. How different can it be? Guju didn't answer, but another person stood up. It was Lan Ji's sister, Lan Ting, who had been in love with Su Chun for many years. What's different? We from the photography faculty don't need to explain to you. Mu Lichuan looked up coldly and narrowed his eyes. You don't have the right to listen. Compared to Guju, he probably hated people who gossip behind their backs more. Lan Ting was one of them. Perhaps it was because everyone could feel that Mu Lichuan's tone was different. Those who admired Mu Lichuan responded immediately. Hey, where did you come from? Can you be careful when you talk to young Masterly? She's not from our faculty. What does it have to do with you? Don't you know? She lives by the sea and has more control than anyone else. I heard that. She was the one who gossiped about what happened between Luo Qingshun and Professor Su. Oh, you can't get what you love. What's the use of being good-looking? You're such a villain. This wave of comments was probably very hurtful to Lan Ting. She rarely saw her pale face. It was as if the secret that had been buried in her heart for a long time was suddenly revealed. I'm just asking a question. Young Master Li, you don't have to be so hostile. After a long while, Lan Ting took a deep breath and defended herself. I didn't say anything about Luo Qingshun. Actually, she had been waiting. She waited for the man to speak up to protect her. After all, in her heart, if there was no so-called Qingyu heart, Su Chun should care more about her, not Luo Qingshun. But Su Chun, even when everyone's eyes were on her, he didn't speak up for her. She didn't know why. She only knew that her heart felt terrible. This uncomfortable and endless wait finally had a turn for the better. But the direction of the situation was completely different from what she had imagined. And Qingyu had been dead for 4 years. But the person Su Chun cared about again wasn't her. Why? Why did she work so hard? She fell in love with Su Chun even earlier than in Qingyu. But Su Chun never gave her a chance. You didn't say it, but you did. Mu Lichuan walked forward from the photo and stood firmly beside Luo Qingshun. With a frivolous look in his eyes, he said, "Moreover, I'm a housekeeper. You're targeting her, so I'm targeting you. Is that wrong?" In the next second, everyone's eyes fell on Mu Lichuan. Chapter 28:31. Everyone gasped in unison. It was enough to prove how cool Mu Lichuan was when he said, "Protect her." Some of them didn't believe that the girl standing next to Mu Lichuan was Luo Qingshun at first, but now they had no choice but to believe it. Lan Ting took a deep breath and looked at Su Chun from the corner of her eye. But Su Chun's eyes had been on Luo Qingshun the entire time, never moving at all. At this moment, she wanted to cry, but she knew that she couldn't. She turned around proudly and left the place. Along the way, she could hear the murmurs, and all of them were unpleasant words. Why? Why was the goddess of luck always so far away from her? Why? Why wasn't she the person that Su Chun cared about after waiting for 4 years? The exhibition was a success. Luo Qingshun also explained to the students how she managed to take the picture of the icicle of death. The icicle of death was a special phenomenon. It only appeared for a short period of time, but it was very spectacular. Before the icicle of death appeared, the movement of the Antarctic crust increased significantly. At this time, a creature called the hidden ice butterfly would appear. In other words, as long as one could see the hidden ice butterfly, they would be able to avoid the icicle of death. It wasn't luck. Guju stomped her feet in anger and left the photography faculty under the crowd size. She hated poor students, and she hated poor students like Luo Qingshun even more. She hated poor students like her even more. In her eyes, this was an extremely ridiculous thing. Poverty was a symbol of low status. Wealth was a symbol of aristocracy. In her eyes, this was the truth, and it would never change. In the end, the 30 people from the photography faculty who went to the desert were Mu Lichuan, Luo Qingshun, Lan Ji, Gu Shu, the bespectacled man, and Bai Shui. Speaking of Bai Shui, her photo was taken in front of a shark. It was still a very dangerous scene, but when the teacher asked her to describe the photo, she stuttered and said something very official. This made everyone doubt the authenticity of the photo, or maybe she had hired the shooter to take the photo. But as long as the shooter didn't show up, no one could prove that the photo was fake. Naturally, Bai Shui didn't like Luo Qingshun. However, since she didn't know much about photography and she had to appear obedient in front of Mu Lichuan, she didn't say a word when Luo Qingshun and Gu Zhu had a conflict in the morning. It was the last theory class of the photography department. After the bell rang, the homeroom teacher said, "The 10 students in our class who have won the chance to film in the desert should go home tonight and prepare well. This time, we are going to the desert, so it will be a little dangerous. If you are afraid, you can choose not to go." "Ah, if you're not going, please tell me. I'll fill the empty spot," a fat man said. "Don't. Give the opportunity to the girls." I'll fill the empty spot, a girl with round eyes said. In fact, for people who like photography, the word dangerous was inevitable to a certain extent. After all, if he wanted to take different photos, he would have to go to places where there were fewer people or no one. Therefore, if it was so difficult to obtain a spot, it was impossible for those who had obtained it not to go. Chapter 28:32. Ring. Luo Qingshun was still listening to the teacher, but her thoughts were interrupted by the vibration of her phone. I'll bring you somewhere later. Mu Lichuan. After seeing the message, Luo Qingshun could not help but feel her heart skip a beat. He was so mysterious. Was Mu Lichuan going to confess to her? It should not be. His affection for her was only 50%, and with his personality, he would not confess to her when his affection for her was only 50%. Qingshun, is young Masterly asking you out? Lan Ji's voice suddenly rang in her ear, giving her a fright. Yes. Luo Qingshun nodded and said, he should be asking me to buy something for the desert. Actually, she did not believe it herself when she said it. With Mu Lichuan's status, why would he need to buy something for the desert? Can I gossip? She pursed her lips and laughed softly. Can I? Yes, I think so. She felt that Lan Ji was a little different today. In the past, she was not interested in what happened between her and Mu Lichuan, but today, she seemed to want to know something. Are you with young Masterly? Her eyes were clear, and she looked very sincere. But she had seen many people, and she could see a different emotion in this pair of clear eyes, even if Lan Ji had hidden it very well. After a while, she narrowed her eyes and looked into her eyes. No. If there was, then there was. If there was no, then there was no. Since Lan Ji was her friend, she would not lie to her. Although she had 50% affection for Mu Lichuan, he did not confess to her. If they were not together, then they were not together. Is that so? It was a surprised tone. Even if Lan Ji tried to suppress it, she could still hear it. Yes, Luo Qingshun said with a soft laugh. Isn't young Masterly famous for being able to walk through 10,000 flowers without a single leaf touching him? Maybe it's just a flash in the pan for me to be by his side. No. Lan Ji pursed her lips and said, I think young Masterly is very special to Qingshun. Really? Maybe. Before she could finish her sentence, a jacket suddenly appeared on her body. The moment she raised her head, the familiar cap fell on her head again. Did you receive the message I sent you? Mu Lichuan's eyes were filled with adoration as he leaned against the table beside her and said, Why are you dawdling? Everyone likes to dawdle after school. Luo Qingshun straightened her cap and said, Besides, you've already retaliated against me. Okay. What? Young Masterly, shouldn't you take a look at the crowd behind you? Mu Lichuan looked into her eyes. Those starry eyes were filled with a cold glint at this moment. He said softly, I saw it. But who told you to say that you're short-lived? He said so much and got so close to her. He probably wanted everyone to know that she was not a flash in the pan. There were some emotions that only he knew. He thought that he did not need others to understand, and he could let everyone think that she was Mu Lichuan's woman. But it seemed like his bad deeds in the past made everyone think that she was just a passerby in his life. But in fact, she was not a passerby. Chapter 28:33. The class was filled with people, and the corridor was filled with people. The girls who adored him, liked him, and worshipped him were all holding their breaths as they waited for his answer. However, Luo Qingshun seemed to have heard the sound of their hearts breaking. There was also the sound of her heart beating uncontrollably. He slowly turned around, and there was a trace of gentleness and love in his deep eyes. The setting sun shone through the window as he looked at her and said word by word, Aren't you my girlfriend? Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 60%. What did he mean? Was he confessing? Using this method? Wasn't this a little too exaggerated? No. It shouldn't be exaggerated. Wasn't this a little forced? There was a wave of sighs. It was probably the wails of the fangirls after their hearts were broken. It had to be said that Mu Lichuan was quite ruthless. Saying these words in front of so many fangirls, it was really no. Scared. Down. Fans. Cough, cough. Luo Qingchun cleared her throat and asked with a faint look in her eyes, "Is that so?" Hiss! There was a cold gasp as everyone looked at Luo Qingchun in disbelief. After all, the most handsome boy in the Royal Noble Academy, Mu Lichuan, had admitted his relationship with Luo Qingchun in front of everyone. However, the other party's tone of questioning made everyone's heart skip a beat. They didn't want their perfect Prince Charming to have a girlfriend, but they also didn't want him to be rejected by a normal student. What a contradiction! What a dilemma! It was as if their hearts were hanging because of their idol. Mu Lichuan raised his eyebrows and put his hands in his pockets as he walked towards her. When he was just inches away from her, he leaned over and whispered in her ear, "If you reject me, I will reveal your identity." "You?" Luo Qingchun was stunned. Her eyes widened as she replied in a low voice, "You're threatening me." "Not really. Isn't this a threat? This is just a reward for your hesitation." Mu Lichuan smiled and said, "After all, I'm really injured." Injured? She had only asked him one question in return. What was he injured in? I'll give you 3 seconds to make a decision." Mu Lichuan looked at her, with sparkling eyes and a faint smile on his face. 3, 2, 1, of course. Luo Qingchun took Mu Lichuan's wrist and looked at everyone with a smile. "How could it not be? It's my honor to be able to become young Master Li's girlfriend." As soon as she finished speaking, she immediately moved closer to Mu Lichuan with a bright smile on her face. "Are you happy now, young Master Mu? Because you still look like you're giving in, I still feel hurt." He pretended to look aggrieved, but he still held her hand. He knew better than anyone else that once he held onto someone's hand, he would never let go of it again. Therefore, the moment he held her hand, he could feel the joy in his heart, and he couldn't hide the smile on his face. "I'm not giving in." Luo Qingchun pursed her lips and nodded with a smile. "I'm happy to be able to become Mu Lichuan's girlfriend." "You mean I mean it." Chapter 28:34. The most handsome boy in the Royal Empire Academy, Mu Lichuan, had a girlfriend. No one would deny it because this was the first time he held her hand as they walked out of school. Jealousy, envy, indignation, anger, and sadness. When all these gazes landed on her, she could clearly feel how popular Mu Lichuan was in school. He was really a popular young man. Actually, on their way to the school gate, she saw another person. It was Su Chun. She took a quick glance at him and felt that his gaze was deep and gloomy, making it hard for her to see through him. From the corner of his eyes, she could see all the attention he had for Su Chun. Deep in her heart, she no longer felt anything. Even the last remnants of the original owner of this body no longer existed. Sitting in the back seat of Mu Lichuan's Maserati, Luo Qingchun initially thought that he was going to bring her out for a feast. Little did she know that he had brought her to a secluded and quiet place. "Where are we?" "The Mu family's private base." "Why did you bring me here?" Luo Qingchun was a little confused. Usually, it was normal for rich families to have some strange things. Some of them had private jets, some bought a row of villas and built their private kingdom. Some of them were like Mu Lichuan's family, building their own base. However, the main point was, why did he bring her to such a place in the middle of the night? Hiss! In the next second, Luo Qingchun pretended to panic and took a step back. You can't be thinking of taking advantage of the dark and windy night in such a secluded place. You want to, Mu Lichuan seemed to have noticed the playful look in her eyes. He looked at her faintly and pretended that his trick had been seen through. "What should I do? Since you've seen through me, I can only do it on the spot." Mu Lichuan turned the front passenger seat around and stopped the car a few millimeters away from her. At that moment, Luo Qingchun felt her cheeks turning red. In such a secluded place in the middle of the night, only her nervous heartbeat could be heard. Wasn't she the one who was teasing him? Why did it suddenly feel like the roles had been reversed? Young Masterly. It can't be. Luo Qingchun pursed her lips as she looked at the face that couldn't be described. The long lashes, the thin lips, and those eyes that were as deep as ink had a faint sparkle to them. At this moment, she suddenly realized that she was also obsessed with looks. Looking at such a beautiful face, there was a feeling of joy in her heart. Mu Lichuan's eyebrows moved slightly as he looked into her eyes with a faint smile. Apologize and I'll forgive you. What if you don't apologize? Luo Qingshun raised her eyebrows and asked. If you don't apologize? Mu Lichuan's tone suddenly became deeper. That deep tone of his seemed to be very serious. Even the smile at the corner of his lips disappeared. How is it? Don't tell me you want to kill someone in the wilderness, ugh. Before she could finish her sentence, Mu Lichuan's thin lips kissed her. Ding! Affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 70%. It was like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water, but he seemed to have been frozen in time. He didn't move at all. Luo Qingxun's head beeped repeatedly, as if a white light had flashed past. When she came back to her senses, Mu Lichuan had already raised his right hand and knocked on her head. This is what you get for not apologizing. Mu Lichuan. Luo Qingxun suddenly reacted. She looked at Mu Lichuan and said, I'm just asking. Can I ask? Shouldn't there be a process between asking and taking action? Chapter 2835. Luo Qingxun probably didn't know that Mu Lichuan was very nervous as well. That was why when he kissed her, he stopped moving. It wasn't because he didn't want a more intimate kiss. It was because under his calm exterior, his heart was beating wildly. He was nervous as well. After all, this was his first kiss. The air in the car seemed to have frozen at that moment. Other than the minty scent in the car, there was only the sound of their breathing. There was a hint of sweetness amidst the ambiguity. Ahem. Luo Qingxun cleared her throat to break the silence. Why don't we get out of the car first? Okay. Mu Lichuan nodded seriously and replied, You're right. He brought her to the Mu family's private base, which was 10 kilometers away from the city center. The people inside were all talents trained by the Mu family. The business circle wasn't as simple as people thought. This world wasn't just black and white. There would always be a force that belonged to you. At least when someone attacked you, you would have the ability to fight back. This was the effect of the Mu family's base. Aren't you surprised at all? Mu Lichuan looked at her from the side. Looking at her calm face, he was a little confused. Luo Qingxun chuckled when she heard this. Our fathers are the same type of people. To a certain extent, the Luo family's status in the business circle was higher than the Mu family's. The title of the richest family in the country wasn't just for show. For someone like Luo Songbai, it was natural that he would have his own force. From what she remembered, the Luo family's military base should be bigger than this place. However, she had only been there once, so she couldn't remember it clearly. It seems like I've been showing off in front of Miss Luo. Mu Lichuan raised his eyebrows and said, Since the heir of the Luo family can only inherit the family at the age of 20, you shouldn't have received any training. Training? Luo Qingxun blinked and smiled. Our family relies on talent. Although I didn't have the time to receive any training, I'm talented. In the next second, Luo Qingxun saw Mu Lichuan's helpless expression. There was even a hint of affection in his expression. Ahem. He cleared his throat and said, Since we're going to the desert the day after tomorrow, there are a lot of things that I can't tell you. Ah. Luo Qingxun frowned slightly and looked at him doubtfully. Aren't we taking photos in the desert? Why do I feel like you're sending us to our deaths? Have you ever been to the desert? Oh. Luo Qingxun recalled some scenes of the past thousands of years and shook her head. No. They might be passing by, but they didn't go to the desert for a specific purpose. Anything can happen in the deserted area. Mu Lichuan explained, There might also be situations where I'm not by your side. As a photographer, he knew very well that the more dangerous the place was, the more different things could be captured. The North Pole, the South Pole, the desert, the rainforest, the no man's land, etc. The more places he had been to and the more pictures he had taken, the more he knew that as long as he was in the no man's land, it would be like going to hell to a certain extent. Anything could happen in the no man's land. Sometimes life and death could be decided in an instant. What do you mean by that? Luo Qingxun narrowed her eyes. Is the place we're going to dangerous? Chapter 2836. But what? But the desert is still a desert. Just in case, and I mean just in case, what I've taught you tonight can minimize the danger. She didn't know why, but Mu Lichuan looked so handsome when he was serious. She couldn't get tired of looking at him. Is that why you can go to so many places and take so many dangerous photos and come back safe and sound every time? Luo Qingxun chuckled and said, "You're really different from what I imagined you to be. You didn't imagine me to be a lazy rich kid, did you?" "Yes. Although you're not exactly like that. You're not a desperate man either." "I love photography." Mu Lichuan looked into her eyes and said, "I can give up everything for it." Luo Qingxun was stunned for a moment. Suddenly, she felt as if a lifetime had passed. A question flashed through her mind. Who's more important, photography or me? Although this question seemed very childish, there was a saying in the book, childish girls are the most adorable. However, she didn't ask. Because she only had 70% affection for him, she didn't ask. In the future, whenever she thought of this moment, she would always regret not asking this question. It felt as if a lifetime had passed since she had last seen him. "What are you thinking about?" "No, nothing." Luo Qingxun shook her head and said, "So, what do you want me to do?" "Theory and practice." Mu Lichuan pointed at the room in front of him and said, "Let's start with the theory." For the next hour, Mu Lichuan was like a little teacher. He explained to her about the dangers of the desert and the no-man's land, as well as the solutions. Luo Qingxun suddenly felt that Mu Lichuan was much more outstanding than she had imagined. She felt as if she was glowing all of a sudden. "But I think," Luo Qingxun closed her notebook and said, "there might be a lot of things that we won't need. The desert is ever-changing, just like the snow mountain." Mu Lichuan looked at her and said, "Actually, if it's possible, I hope that you won't go." Cough. Luo Qingxun cleared her throat and said, "The reason why I said it won't be of much use is because I have you, with young Master Mu by my side. What do I have to worry about? Why are you suddenly flattering me? Is it because you don't want to practice? I just saw a lot of people still training outside." Luo Qingxun pointed outside the window and said, "Don't tell me you're talking about me fighting with them. I'll get them to teach you some tricks." Mu Lichuan looked at her and said, "What if there's no what if? Compared to theoretical knowledge, practical operations." "Oh, that's not right." She was obviously more confident in fighting. In terms of theory, it was true that she didn't know as much as Mu Lichuan when it came to danger zones. However, when it came to fighting in a no-man's land, no matter how safe the situation is, there's always a chance. "What I mean is," Luo Qingxun nodded slightly and chuckled, "even if there's a chance, they are not my opponent. 1 against 10 shouldn't be a problem." To be honest, she felt that it was unfair for her to fight 1 against 10. In fact, in her heart, she felt that she could take on 50 people by herself. However, when she thought about it, it wasn't good to be too proud. It would make her feel disgusted, and it wouldn't be good if her favorability was deducted. As soon as she finished speaking, Mu Lichuan was the one who was stunned. Although he was stunned, he didn't think that his men, who had been trained by the Mu family for more than 10 years, would lose to a young lady. Chapter 28:37. The moon hung high in the night sky as the yellow soil flew in the air. Luo Qingxun changed into her camouflage uniform and stood in the middle of a group of men. Actually, not all of them were men. There were a few girls among them, and they were quite good-looking. Teach her the most basic moves so that she can escape if she's in a difficult situation. Mu Lichuan's majestic voice rang across the empty yellow soil. It was much louder than his usual voice, and it gave off a special vibe. "Yes, young master," everyone replied in unison. Luo Qingxun narrowed her eyes as she looked at the people in front of her. "Miss, please forgive us if we offend you." The person standing outside was the instructor who led them. He had tanned skin and a burly figure. Even in the dark, she could feel his strong physique. "Same here." Luo Qingxun's eyebrows moved slightly. She looked at Mu Lichuan with her clear eyes and said, "Well, fists don't have eyes. What if they won't?" "No, I'm saying what if. I hit them too hard. You won't be able to hurt them." Mu Lichuan patted her head and said, "Don't worry. It's just basic knowledge. You don't have to be nervous." She wasn't nervous at all. "Ha ha ha." In the next second, Luo Qingxun nodded slightly and narrowed her eyes. "Let's do it then." The boys looked at each other. None of them had the intention to attack. The girls, on the other hand, couldn't hold themselves back. They clenched their fists and looked at Luo Qingshun. "Miss, please forgive us." At that moment, the girls walked forward and demonstrated their moves as they read it out loud. Catch the enemy from behind. Of course, they knew how important this girl was to Mu Lichuan. After all, they had been in the Mu family's base for so many years, and they had never seen their young master bring a girl home. Although they were jealous of her, they didn't dare to hit her too hard. They only wanted to use a little more force. But what they never thought was that they didn't even have a chance to touch Luo Qingshun. She dodged to the side with a small movement technique and raised her right hand, grabbing 2 inches from their collarbones and knocking 2 of them to the ground. Her movements were so fast that even Mu Lichuan couldn't see it clearly. Luo Qingshun pursed her lips and chuckled. "Do you still want to compete?" Everyone was stunned and revealed expressions of disbelief. The instructor, standing at the front, frowned. He stood in front of Luo Qingshun and said, "Miss, please make your move." The subordinates he trained might not understand, but after being an instructor for so many years, he knew very well that the girl in front of him was definitely above all of them in terms of speed and strength. Even him, Instructor Li. Mu Lichuan frowned slightly. Just as he was about to stop him, Luo Qingshun had already leaped forward and reached Instructor Li's side at the fastest speed possible. Fighting in pairs was different from fighting in groups, just like how dealing with men was different from dealing with women. Men and women had different body structures, so their weaknesses were naturally different. Instructor Li clenched his fists and immediately received the attack. However, even though he had received this attack, he still felt cold sweat dripping down his body. Even his usually calm breathing had become hurried. Iche. Both of them fought back and forth on the sand for 10 rounds. Actually, Luo Qingshun had only used 70% of her strength, but Instructor Li had already used all of his strength. In the silent night, only the sound of Instructor Li's heavy breathing could be heard. On the other hand, Luo Qingshun. Chapter 28:38. Instructor Li clenched his teeth. Just as he was about to use all his strength to fight back, Luo Qingshun softly said, "Don't use too much strength. The muscles in your shoulders are already stretched to the limit if you keep moving. If you move, I'm afraid." Her voice was neither soft nor loud, but everyone present could hear her clearly. Instructor Li closed his eyes for a moment before opening them again. He looked at Luo Qingshun and said, "Miss Luo Qingshun, you're amazing. I've lost." "You're amazing too." Luo Qingshun chuckled and walked to Mu Lichuan's side. She held his hand and said, "Am I right, young Master Mu?" Mu Lichuan was stunned for a moment. A dark look flashed across his deep eyes. Under that dark look was endless disbelief. Tonight, he was completely stunned by Luo Qingshun. So much so that the moment she held his wrist, he was still in a daze. "You're really making me, what? Nothing." He shook his head gently and held her hand. "I can't believe that the girl next door has really grown up. With her skills just now, even he might not be able to win against her. If she didn't train for more than 10 years, it would be impossible for her to have such skills." The heir of the Luo family was really outstanding. On the way home, Mu Lichuan's words were much quieter. He seemed to be immersed in the memory of her fight with Instructor Li. He couldn't forget it for a long time. It wasn't until the Maserati stopped at her dormitory that he raised his right hand and touched her face. "You've become so dazzling all of a sudden. I couldn't react in time." He suddenly understood why Su-chan was still lingering around her even after they broke up. He thought that the dazzling light that radiated from her body could only shine on him. He never thought that she would shine on someone else's heart as well. However, that person didn't realize it at first and regretted it later on. "You're the dazzling one." Luo Qingshun blinked and said, "You're the most handsome guy in Imperial College. You're the most dazzling person in everyone's heart, young Master Li. Are you happy being mischievous?" "Very happy." "Rest early. We'll enter the desert once we're fully prepared." Mu Lichuan paused for a moment before he smiled helplessly. "I was worried that you wouldn't be able to protect yourself when you're alone. But now, I feel that you won't have any problems entering the desert alone." Suddenly, The feeling of not being needed surged into his heart. It was probably because of this feeling that the knot in his heart had never been untied. I won't go to the desert alone. Luo Qingshan rubbed her face against his palm and said, If you don't go, I don't want to go. Hearing this, Mu Lichuan's eyebrows twitched. He placed his hands on her shoulders and planted a kiss on her forehead. Let's go home. Be careful on the road. Good night, little girl. Luo Qingshan watched him leave in his Maserati and gave a sigh. Did she perform too well tonight? Was that why Mu Lichuan was feeling pressured? Ha ha. Deep down, she was secretly happy. The more you care about someone, the more worried you'd be if that person was too dazzling. Because of this, you'd worry that you weren't good enough and that you didn't have a right to have him. Before tonight, Mu Lichuan probably thought that he was her son. However, after tonight, he probably didn't think so anymore. This kind of emotion could be described with one word: insecurity. Chapter 28:39. Qingshan, why did you come back so late? The show had been sleeping early recently, but she was still awake today, even though it was already so late. Since she couldn't be reassigned to a new dorm for the time being, she could stay in the same dorm even if she wasn't in the same department as the chubby girl. What's wrong, chubby girl? Luo Qingshan put down her bag and said, Did something happen to your brother again? No. Li Xiu shook her head and said that. Professor Su came looking for you. Su-chan? Yes, Professor Su-chan. Luo Qingshan frowned slightly and snorted. Why did he come looking for me? Didn't Su-chan want her to stay far away from him? Wasn't this the result he wanted the most? She didn't deliberately cause trouble for him or take revenge on him after coming to this world. Why did he come looking for her again and again? Couldn't get what he wanted? Was he always in a commotion because he couldn't get what he wanted? What should she do? She really looked down on this kind of man. Ahem, Li Xiu coughed twice and said, He said that you must give him a call. It should be something important. There's nothing important between me and him. But no buts. Luo Qingshan pushed her shoulder and said, Rest early. I still have to go shopping early tomorrow. She would be entering the desert the day after tomorrow, even though it was only at the edge of the no-man's land. But it was still a desolate place. It was always better to be prepared than to be unprepared. Little did she know that she would meet Su-chan in front of the dorm when she woke up early the next morning. Or rather, it should be said that he was waiting for her in front of her dorm. Luo Qingshan only glanced at him indifferently. She didn't say anything and walked in another direction. Qingshan, he called out to her in the end. His voice was low with a touch of helplessness. Can we talk? I don't think I have anything to talk to Professor Su about. Luo Qingshan didn't turn around. Her tone was as cold as ice. Qingshan, stop fooling around. Su-chan quickly stepped forward and grabbed her wrist. The desert isn't a place you can go. You're still young. It's too dangerous. When he found out that she was determined to go to the desert for the shoot, his heart was hanging in the air, and he couldn't calm down no matter what. It had been a long time since he felt nervous and afraid of losing something. Ha! Luo Qingshan sneered twice. Could it be that the people heading to the desert this time are all older people? Professor Su, don't you think you're meddling too much? Qingshan. Su-chan took a deep breath, still not letting go of her arm. He closed his eyes, his long eyelashes fluttering on his handsome face. It had been a long time since she had seen Su-chan at such a close distance. It had probably been a long time. One plane, 1 century, 1 parallel space-time. She didn't remember, and the host probably didn't remember either. What do you want to say? Luo Qingshan was too lazy to continue arguing with him. She removed his hand from her wrist with her left hand and looked at him slightly. Can we just talk? It was probably the emotions left behind by the host. As long as she was in the same place as Su-chan, she would feel especially tired. This tiredness was mocking Su-chan and also mocking herself. Chapter 28:40. Luo Qingshan had never thought that Su-chan would say those words to her. He was such an arrogant person, a person who thought that he was loyal. He could force himself to fall in love with someone for Qingyu's heart. Such a man was telling her that he couldn't let her go. Why? Why did she find it so ridiculous? Su-chan, don't you think it's ridiculous for you to say that? Luo Qingshan turned around and looked at his defeated face. If you didn't say it, I would have thought that you were still human. I don't know what's wrong with me." He raised his right hand, trembled slightly, and then slowly put it down. He wanted to grab her hand, but he suddenly realized that he didn't have the right to do so. "But after you said those words, I don't think you're a man at all." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and walked away without looking back. In the next second, Su-chun looked at her back and said, "I couldn't let you go, but I never thought that you would come back to my side. I know that you're already his, but the desert is too dangerous for you. I can't let you go." At that moment, in the morning when the sun wasn't very bright, a dazzling headlight suddenly shone over, forming a straight line of light behind them. The young man was wearing a white sweater as he got out of the Maserati. His chestnut-colored hair was dazzling under the light of the car. Coupled with his handsome face, he attracted everyone's attention in the bustling crowd. "She doesn't need you." After Mu Lichuan and Su-chun passed by, he firmly stood by Luo Qingchen's side and took her hand. His deep-as-ink eyes were filled with hostility. After he went home last night, he took a shower and lay on the bed. He tossed and turned and didn't sleep at all. It was true that he had never liked anyone before, but he didn't think that liking someone would turn him into this. The more radiant she was, the more nervous he became. For the first time, he wished that the person he loved was ordinary. It didn't matter if she was ugly. That way, no one would like her, and she could be by his side forever. He knew that he was very selfish, but this thought kept circling in his mind like a madman, and he couldn't get rid of it. "Do you really like her?" This time, Su-chun didn't avoid his gaze. Instead, he looked him in the eye and said, "Or is it just because it's new and interesting?" "I'm sorry, Professor Su." Mu Lichuan narrowed his eyes and looked at Su-chun with hostility. "I'm not you. I only have one girlfriend in my life, from the past to the present, to the future." Wow! Perhaps it was because Mu Lichuan was too handsome, even though it was early and there weren't many people around them. Even though there weren't many people, everyone still cheered in unison. Mu Lichuan. Luo Qingchun bit her lip and looked up at him. She would be lying's T.S. If Susan is right now. Su? Because she could feel her eyes reddening uncontrollably when he said those words. Sometimes, one didn't need a promise of life and death to be moved. A simple sentence could be enough to move someone. You. Perhaps it was because of Mu Lichuan's aura that even Su-chun found herself speechless. Chapter 28:41. The warmth that came from his palm was firm and hot. That was the first time she felt her importance in Mu Lichuan's heart. The feeling of sweetness entering her heart was not bad. After that day, Luo Qingchun did not see Su-chun for a long time. Her last impression of him was probably his pair of dark and regretful eyes and that hesitant expression. She did not see Su-chun not because he was not teaching in school, but because the photography students went to the desert to take photos. This is probably the first and last time I'm seeing a desert sunset in my life. Lanji sighed beside her and took a photo with her DSLR. Luo Qingchun glanced at the photo. There was always a person's figure from a certain angle in the photo. It was either close or far, bright or dark. Actually, she knew who she was taking photos of, but she did not ask and she did not say. "What are you thinking about?" A pair of large hands suddenly touched her head, startling both her and Lanji. Luo Qingchun looked up slowly and took the water bottle from Mu Lichuan's hand. "I'm thinking about how I'll be tanned when I go back." "She's taken, don't worry." He sat beside her and touched her forehead softly. "You have a fever. Although it's normal, you still have to drink more water for the next 2 days. Come to me on time every day to check your temperature." Luo Qingchun froze slightly and touched her forehead. It was indeed a little hot. It should be the heat of the desert, which was a normal phenomenon. "That's amazing." Luo Qingchun pursed her lips and imitated his actions. She put her hand on his forehead and touched it. "Then why don't you have a fever? I've been to the desert many times." Mu Lichuan took her hand and said, "It's just that I've never been to the deserts in the no man's land." Cough, cough. Lanji, who was sitting beside her, coughed lightly and said with a smile, "I'll go set up the tent and not be a third wheel." Luo Qingchun wanted to say something, but Lanji had already waved at her and turned around with a bright smile. Some things were seen through but not said out loud, but there would always be a strange feeling in her heart. It couldn't be said that he felt heartache for her. It was probably just that he couldn't explain it clearly. The desert in the no man's land was near the border between the two countries. Day and night were different from usual. The nights are long and the days are short. What Luo Qingshun didn't expect was that after coming to the desert, her fever didn't go down. Many of his companions showed no signs of their fever subsiding. This kind of heat was not uncommon in the desert, but it was very strange that the fever did not subside for a long time. Other than the fever, do you feel any discomfort? It was already dark at 3 p.m. Mu Lichuan walked to her side with the medicine and touched her forehead. It was still scalding hot. Just like the day he arrived, it didn't get any better. Cough, cough. Luo Qingshun lightly coughed twice, pursed her lips, and said, I feel a little itchy on the back of my hand. She also felt that something was wrong with her. In the middle of the night, she would feel pain in her heart. However, it was her first time entering the desert after all. Perhaps it was because of the climate, so she didn't pay too much attention to it. But now, it seemed that things weren't that simple. It shouldn't be. Hi, Li Chuan. A beautiful woman from the expedition team walked in and waved at Mu Li Chuan. Are you still worried about your little girlfriend? Chapter 2842. Even though Mu Li Chuan had left the school, he was still the center of attention. Many girls from the expedition team had greeted him. Yes, don't worry. It's just a small matter. It seems like he rarely comes out to adventure. At that moment, Luo Qingshun couldn't help but laugh coldly in her heart. Who would come to such a place to adventure all day? After Su Man left, Luo Qingshun looked at Mu Lichuan with her right hand on her cheek. The people from the expedition team don't seem to have a fever. They often come to places like this, so they should be very familiar with the climate. Mu Lichuan frowned. But I still think that you've had a fever for too long. If you're not better after 2 days, I'll send you back first. But they have a fever too. Luo Qingshun rolled her eyes. Don't they plan to go back? It'll be decided by you. Mu Lichuan's deep eyes had a faint light. He touched her head lovingly and said, Your fever won't go down. I can't concentrate. Not to mention taking photos, he even tossed and turned when he slept at night, unable to fall asleep. So, this was how it felt to care too much about someone. Although it tied him down, he felt sweet at the same time. Time passed very quickly. 2 days later, all the girls in the photography faculty had a fever. This fever was like a virus spreading, as if everyone was infected. After a discussion, the teachers decided to end the shoot early. Although there weren't many useful photos, the students were unusually sick, so they had no choice but to go back early. But on the day they planned to go back, the people from the expedition team disappeared. In the desert of no man's land, a compass was not completely useful. They had also come in with the expedition team. Their sudden disappearance caused everyone to fall into a panic. In a place like the no man's land, once an accident happened, it would make people panic. Qingshun, will we die here? In the middle of the night, Lanji suddenly grabbed her hand. Her face was red from the fever. She looked at her and said, I'm scared. It was inevitable that the plot of a TV drama would suddenly happen in real life. Don't be afraid. Although we are in the desert of the no man's land, we are not inside, but on the edge. Luo Qingshun comforted him. Besides, we have a compass. We can go back tomorrow. But I feel very uncomfortable. Lanji touched her heart and said, I feel a lot of pain here when I'm sleeping. Luo Qingshun was stunned for a moment before she hurriedly asked, Do you feel itchy on the back of your hand? Yes. Lanji nodded desperately. I almost scratched myself yesterday. Come on, turn the light to the brightest. Luo Qingshun picked up the back of her hand and said, Let me see. The back of Lanji's hand was very red from her scratches, and there were even a few spots that were bleeding slightly. Luo Qingshun was very close. After taking a closer look, her face instantly turned pale. Oh no, what's wrong? Lanji looked at her pale face and became even more nervous. After all, no matter how nervous she was, Luo Qingshun wasn't nervous at all. We don't have a fever because of the heat. Luo Qingshan said with a frown. We should be suffering from chronic poisoning. Chapter 2843. At that time, the system had told her about the antidote, but she did not understand it very well. Now she understood that they had been poisoned, and only the girls were poisoned. Because her eyesight was very good, she could see a small black worm wriggling under the skin of Lanji's arm. They were wriggling very quickly, and she could not see clearly what they looked like. Poisoned? Lanji looked at her in panic. Why were we poisoned? I'm not sure. Luo Qingshan frowned and said, I was one of the first batch of people who had a fever, the food I ate. In the next second, Su Man's face flashed in front of Luo Qingshan's eyes. Mei Zigua. Luo Qingshan's eyebrows moved slightly. Su Man. But Su Man was only a member of the expedition team. They were students from a city. They had no grudges against her. Why would she poison them? Half an hour later, they asked their form teacher, Wang Ying, in the tent. Wang Ying's face almost turned pale, and her whole body was trembling. Such a violent reaction made Luo Qingshan feel that this form teacher must know something. Reality proved that she had guessed some of the reasons. Sigh. She sighed softly and said, although I don't know the relationship between Su Man and that female student, I think there's a high chance that they are related. Female student? Mu Lichuan frowned and said, did you offend someone? 3 years ago, I led a group of students and got the opportunity to go to the deserted desert to film, but it was not this desert. Wang Ying was very nervous, as she recalled. She seemed to be very unwilling to mention this, but it seemed that she had to say it now. And then, Luo Qingshan narrowed her eyes and said, did something happen? Yes. Wang Ying sighed deeply and nodded. We encountered a fire and wind. One of the students had a fever and could not leave. Fire. Fire and wind? Lanji was stunned and said, isn't this a phenomenon that only happens in the depths of the desert? At the time, several boys in the class went back to look for her, but the girls in the class thought that it was too dangerous here and wanted to leave early. Wang Ying sighed and said, that female student is an ordinary student, and the rest of the female students are all noble students. She really is an aristocrat. Luo Qingshan coldly snorted. So those boys didn't find her? I found her, but she was injured because she was blown by the wind of the fire. Wang Ying recalled. She had a serious fever, and she kept complaining about itching and pain. At that time, the expedition team told us that we had to leave immediately. In order to ensure the safety of more students, I decided to leave. Lanji froze and exclaimed, you left her? Of course not. Wang Ying shook her head and said, but she was very weak at that time. Several boys took turns to carry her. But on the third day of the return journey, she suddenly disappeared. Disappeared? Luo Qingshan said with a puzzled look. Isn't she injured? How could she disappear? I don't know. Wang Ying shook her head and said, because it was too dangerous. We did not wait for her and continue to walk forward. Now that I think about it, we should continue to look for her. Hiss. Lanji touched her arm and said, what? I feel like I'm listening to a creepy ghost story. Chapter 2844. What did she say? Welcome to the desert of death. Wang Ying gritted her teeth and said, at that time, I thought that it was just something the expedition team would say. But now that they're gone, it's already happened. It doesn't matter if Su Man has anything to do with that female classmate. Luo Qingshan pursed her lips and said, we have to leave this place as soon as possible. Don't worry. We're not far from the road. Wang Ying's gaze suddenly changed as she spoke. Luo Qingshan frowned and said, we followed them all the way here. We're not sure if we're on the map or not. Besides, before she could finish her sentence, the sky suddenly brightened up. Luo Qingshan looked at her watch. It was 3:30 a.m. It shouldn't be. The sky shouldn't be bright at this time. Hey, what's that over there? Sunset clouds? It's so beautiful. Quick, quick, quick. Take a picture. Maybe we can use this picture to receive an award this year. Wow, it's so cool. This is the coolest day I've been in the desert for so many days. Outside the tent, the students were chattering. It seemed like many of them had woken up because of the dawn. It's really cool. Lanji's eyes trembled as she said, I didn't know there was such a cool wind in the desert. No, no. Luo Qingxun and Mu Lichuan said the same word at the same time. Then, they looked up at their homeroom teacher, Wang Ying, whose face was as pale as a sheet. Fire! Fire burning the wind! Damn it! Luo Qingxun immediately lifted the tent and looked at the sunset clouds not far away. With her eyesight, she could clearly see that the sunset clouds were surrounded by golden flames. It was running towards them at an extremely fast speed. That's the fire burning the wind. Don't look. Luo Qingxun ran to her tent as fast as she could and put on her jacket. She took out her compass from her pocket and said, "Let's go. We won't be able to leave if we don't leave now." Everyone was stunned and looked at Luo Qingxun in disbelief. Bai Shui rolled her eyes and spoke first. "Don't try to scare me, okay? We are on the outskirts of the desert, so there can't be any wind or fire. Don't think that you can spout nonsense just because Baidu knows about it. If you don't want to leave, then die here." Mu Lichuan quickly walked to Luo Qingxun's side and carried her backpack. He then placed the hat on her head and said, "Come with me." In fact, Luo Qingxun herself didn't know where to go. However, Mu Lichuan's words seemed to have calmed her down. At this moment when she was in danger, her heart calmed down. The speed of the fire burning the wind was very fast. When they walked to the front, they could feel the waves of cold wind starting to heat up, but all they could see was yellow sand. It was impossible for a girl's physical strength to be as good as a boy's. Furthermore, everyone had been pampered since they were young. Luo Qingxun knew that she couldn't stop, but she couldn't control her legs. "You go first." Luo Qingxun panted and said, "You go first. There are still a lot of people behind us. I'll go with them." As Mu Lichuan looked at her, a faint light flashed across his deep eyes. Chapter 2845. Perhaps it was because Mu Lichuan's gaze was too determined that her eyes started to turn red. Sometimes, youthful love can seem too frivolous. There are many things that you don't understand, but you already have your eyes on someone. He could live and die for a person. But when it comes to the moment of life and death, what you thought was true love would turn into a fairy tale written in a novel. After searching for a way out in the desert for the last few days, Luo Qingxun was in a daze. It was obvious that she couldn't hold on any longer. However, compared to the other girls, she had already held on for a very long time. She saw with her own eyes how Bai Shuiren snatched other people's water and how she wanted to snatch Mu Lichuan's water away. At that moment, she was no longer the elegant little princess she used to be. Instead, she was crazily displaying the bad side of human nature. Or rather, it wasn't the bad side, but the belief that she wanted to live on. When she opened her eyes again, it was already 7 days after the fire. Her surroundings were white, and the air was filled with the smell of formalin. Hospital. She was in the hospital. Your daughter's blood pressure is still unstable, but her vital signs are stabilizing. The doctor's words rang in her ears intermittently. She couldn't hear it clearly, but she could feel the cold, salt water penetrating her body. Qingxing is awake. Mother Luo was the first to realize that she was awake. She walked over to her and asked anxiously, "How are you feeling? Are you feeling better?" Luo Qingxun shook her head and didn't say a word. "It's all thanks to President Mu's son that you can come back safely." Father Luo sighed and said, "It's a pity that his vital signs are still unstable. When Qingxing wakes up, we can go and see him." "Hey, old man, Qingxing just woke up. Don't talk about this first." A mother was selfish to a certain extent. In her eyes, her daughter's health was the most important thing. However, she didn't know that at this very moment, her daughter's heart was pounding. She was panicking. Why? Why wasn't Mu Lichuan awake? It shouldn't be. She clearly remembered that he carried her on his back to the road and found the convoy that was calling for help. But he still hadn't woken up. How can I not? I have so many business dealings with Chairman Mu. Now his son is still in the ICU because of our daughter. Do you think that Father Luo had always been a righteous man in the business world. He felt deeply guilty towards Mu Lichuan's father for what had happened. Luo Qingxun's eyelids, which were originally very heavy, became much more awake at this moment. After Father and Mother Luo left, she took her phone and headed to Mu Lichuan's ward. ICU intensive care unit. This hospital was a private hospital, but it was more luxurious than many tertiary-grade A hospitals in a city. Therefore, the people who lived there were either rich or noble. Luo Qingshun and Mu Lichuan were sent here directly after they left the desert. News of their trip to the desert had spread like wildfire in city. "Miss Luo, are you awake?" When the nurse saw her walking over with the four, she hurriedly supported her and said, "This afternoon, Dr. Lin said that he didn't know when you would wake up. Since this hospital catered to the rich, they were able to call out the names of everyone who came in." Chapter 2846. Young Master Mu. The nurse sighed softly. When he first came to our hospital, his heartbeat was almost non-existent and his breathing was very weak. I don't know the exact cause of his injury, but I know that he went into shock due to excessive blood loss. Excessive blood loss. Luo Qingxin's eyes fluttered slightly, her heart thumping wildly. Why did he lose so much blood? What exactly happened during the few days they walked out of the desert? "Yes," the nurse asked respectfully. "Miss Luo, do you want to go in?" "Yes." Luo Qingxin nodded and said, "I'll be alone for a while. I'll call you if there's anything." "Okay." She closed the door softly. The light in the ward was a little dim. Mu Lichuan lay quietly on the bed, with a vitals detector beside him. His blood pressure was too low, his heartbeat was too fast, and his vitals were indeed unstable. She didn't know why, but she suddenly felt a lump in her throat and her eyes turned slightly red. This time was very different from the past. She didn't even know who the enemy was. She didn't even know why such a thing happened. Who was Su Man? After she poisoned them and brought them into danger, where did she go? There were many questions in her mind that she couldn't understand, but she didn't want to think too much at this moment. The most important thing was for Mu Lichuan to wake up. Before that, everything else could be put aside. "You must wake up." Luo Qingxan raised her hand slightly and touched his head softly. "I still have a lot to say." Everything happened too suddenly. It wasn't the kind of life and death parting face to face, but a parting that didn't even give her a chance to say goodbye. Beep, beep, beep. Just as she was immersed in her thoughts, her phone rang. Luo Qingxin glanced at it. It was a message from Lanji. She opened her inbox. Lanji sent her messages almost every day, asking if she had woken up. It seemed like they were out of danger. "I'm awake. It's okay." Luo Qingxun. Beep, beep, beep. "Let's meet." Lanji. Luo Qingxun took a deep breath and looked at Mu Lichuan's face. Then, she leaned forward slightly and planted a kiss between his eyebrows. "Rest well. Wake up soon." As soon as she finished speaking, she put her phone back in her pocket and walked out of Mu Lichuan's ward. Actually, she didn't notice that the young man lying on the hospital bed gently fluttered his long eyelashes. After returning to her ward, she quietly changed out of her hospital gown and put on her own clothes. At 9:30 p.m., there was no one in the corridor of the hospital. She sent a message to Lanji, telling her to wait at the cafe downstairs of the First City Hospital. After all, Lanji must not have recovered well, and she did not want her to run around. This was because she could clearly feel that her body was still very weak. She felt dizzy and tinnitus after taking a few more steps. Probably because of the time, there were not many people in the cafe. Lanji was still wearing her hospital gown and was sitting in the corner. When she saw Luo Qingxun, she just waved her hand faintly, no longer as enthusiastic as before. It seemed that after experiencing some things, people would grow up and become older. Luo Qingxun sat down opposite her, her eyes trembling slightly. "Are you okay? I ordered milk for you." The next second, Lanji said, "I'm fine.